Regular meeting of City Council for Monday, September 14th to order. And it's our pleasure this morning to welcome our first delegation is our Dawson Creek Municipal Public Library Board and Tom Morris, our manager. So as our first delegation, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us this morning. I'm here with some of my board. We could only have 3 come today. They all wanted to attend, but they're willing to stay home this morning. So we have Terry Foster, who's our board treasurer, Hannah Gilliatt, who is our board chair, and our newest member of the board, Miguel Godao. Godao. I always say it wrong.
Everyone does.
Yeah. So we're here today to talk a little bit about what's been going on at the library in 2020, in case you haven't been aware, and then we kind of want to touch on our budget request at the end. So 2020 started out really great at the library. We had all these big plans. We had backyard chicken presentations coming, and the credit union was coming to do a session on mortgages and all these great things we were planning, and then COVID hit in March. We were closed March 16th at the request of the city, and within a couple of days, every public library in BC closed the same way. So we were closed. We had staff in the building for a few weeks doing jobs we could find them to do, and then we eventually laid off temporarily 9 staff members, including 4 teenagers who did the shelving, and then 5 senior staff members. Myself and our children's librarian were still working the whole time. She was preparing for what we hoped we could do, summer reading club and things like that, and I was just keeping the lights on basically and doing reports for the province and the city and things like that that were due at that time. I think it was in May, Bonnie Henry said that libraries could reopen again, and we took a slow approach. We started our plan to reopen, which was, as you all know, city staff knows that it's a huge undertaking to figure that all out. But we got it going. We also started in June, we started library takeout. So that let our patrons borrow books without coming in the building. So they could call us, email us, use our online catalog. If they had an account, they could put books on hold, and then we would pull them and bring them either up to the vehicle, or they just came to the front door and we put them on a table outside the front door and they picked them up. So that was really popular for the month of June, and then that gave us that time to get our reopening plan in place, and we reopened on July 7th. And right about that time, that's when most of the libraries in BC did the same. There's still a few that are still not completely operational. The big guys take longer to open than the little libraries because they have more branches and things like that, like Vancouver and Fraser Valley. They take a lot longer to get all their branches open. Recently, we just started up interlibrary loans again too, so that was huge for our patrons because interlibrary loans is a huge part of our operation because we don't buy every book that comes out, but other libraries will pick up the slack where we don't have the book, they may have it, or vice versa. So that was a big thing to get going again. That stopped all the way through COVID, or what time we were closed. So we reopened. We were able to do a summer reading club, a modified summer reading club. Usually we have 600 kids a year register for our summer reading club. It's a free club for kids. They keep track of their reading all summer long, can win prizes. We have lots of special event days, usually 1 a week for 8 weeks, and it's everything from a pizza party to story time on the lawn to like beach days, things like that. They're hugely popular. We usually have about 600 kids. This year what we did, we set up a table outside on the lawn under a tent, and we handed out like an activity bag once a week. It was a different one each week. They had a golden ticket inside to win a prize, one a week, and we had grand prizes at the end, but that was about it. We had significantly less kids sign up this year. I think we had 250 kids sign up, which is still great, but it's not 600. And we did have the BC Libraries Federation created an online summer reading club as well, and so you could sign up for that. I think there was 58 kids from our area who signed up for that. That was free as well, and there was activities to do on there. So that was our summer reading club this year. It did mean we had significantly less circulation this summer. I compared July last year, we had 8,000 something circulation, 8,000 books go out the door. And this July, we were like 1 week where we were still closed, but still it was like less than 3,000. So it was a significant less people borrowing books this summer than we normally do. But there were still some, so we were happy to be able to do something. We have noticed a reduction in patrons. Our reopening plan has all of our furniture stacked, so you can't stay. We allow 10 people in at a time, and it's basically come and get your books and then go. We have 2 internet computers out of normally 7 running, just because we can't put enough space between people at those public internet computers, but they're being used, not as much as normal as well. I think less people through the doors is because people come in, they study, they come in to just hang out sometimes, things like that. So it feels emptier than it normally is. But we are having some days where we're quite busy and some days where it's quieter. Yeah, we're allowing 10 people in the building at a time right now. They have to hand sanitize. We're quarantining returned books for a day. It was 72 hours, but the BC CDC says now that it's not necessary to quarantine them at all, but we're still doing a day just to be safe. Our books are covered in plastic, a lot of them, and they say that's a higher risk of transmitting because it stays on the surface longer. So we are taking some precautions there still. We had reduced hours. I think we're going to bump it back up to where we were before, mostly. We thought maybe we would need more time for cleaning, for extra duties that might come up, but it's not appearing to be that way. So I think we're going to go back to our regular hours pretty soon here in the next couple weeks. So we're not doing any in-person programming right now, just because I don't think it's really feasible to do it. Most libraries aren't. So that's one of the reasons why I want to touch on our budget. COVID has really shown us where we have some deficiencies. When we were closed, people didn't have access to books unless they were using ebooks and things like that. We do have ebook. We have 88,000 ebooks and e-audiobooks that are available to people through our library, but some people don't know about that. Don't know how to. You'd have to have download an app and be able to access it, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. And they also have to have a library card, and if they don't have a library card, they can't access those things. So we were trying to put out there, give us a call, we'll get you a card, all that kind of thing. A lot of libraries were doing online programming while they were closed. We managed to get bedtime stories off the ground for a few months where we were recording us reading kids' stories, and the kids could watch them at bedtime or whenever they wanted to. So we were trying to do some things, but there are so many more things we could do if we had the staff who had the knowledge of how to do some of these things. Right now, the web page, the social media, all of that stuff is run off the side of my desk. And it's hard to learn how to create a YouTube page when you're 52 and don't really have a great understanding of how all that stuff. I had to YouTube how to create a YouTube page. So that's kind of where we're facing some challenges, being able to access things, being able to put things out there when we are closed, and going forward in the future, I don't think things are going to change it. People are going to want to have more easy access to library resources online and things like that. Like, our databases. We have databases that probably people aren't aware of. We're looking for somebody who can manage all of these things. Our social media, our marketing, our web page, our databases. Do we have the right databases? Is this what people are looking for, or are we wasting money on something that nobody's going to access? We're just trying to look forward into the future and have that person there. Just as you have a marketing person here at the city that you market all your programs, we want to do the same. And when we are able to have in-person programming again, we'd like that person to also help us with that, like find the programming, create the programming, and advertise that programming. A lot of our staff is busy. We're buying books, cataloging books, processing books, doing interlibrary loans, doing bookkeeping, all those things. And circulation, just people coming in the door and out the door with books. So it's really a position that we think is super important. We are aware that this is a hard time for everybody, funding wise, but we're hoping that you would support us in seeing the value of that position. We're asking for a part-time position right now with benefits, and we think it's good value for our money and for the people of Dawson Creek who could use this service and use our library a lot more than they do now. So I think that some of the board members have some things that they'd like to share, and I'll just be quiet and let them do that. Anna, you want to start, or Miguel? Do you want to sit here? I can sit here. Okay. I'll sit here.
We just need the mic
Do you
is
need the
all
mic?
for the,
Folks watching at home
Thank
and
you.
around the world.
My mind gets scattered, so I've written all my stuff, my thoughts. So these are my thoughts regarding the library. So good morning, Mayor Dale Bumstead and Council. I'm Hannah Gilliott, the chair to the Dawson Creek Municipal Library. And these past couple years with the library has fared its share of challenges, as we all know, from budget cuts to now COVID-19. Our community has felt the strains, and we as a board with Pam have taken our current situation to make a shift in our traditional ways of operations. From closure to reopen, in all of this there was a common factor we could identify with. The future is definitely a tech age. Short share about this recently is in the spring the library introduced me to an app, and it's called the Libby app, and they showed me how to download and use it. So I don't know if everybody knows how to use the Libby app or has one. I hope we all do. A Facebook friend, doesn't look like it, maybe one or two. A Facebook friend over the summer was looking at the best place for audiobooks, and I was able to connect her with and help her have this tool. I love it because I can listen to a book on my phone, and I can do my housework or I can do yard work all at the same time. So that's my thing on it. Wouldn't it be great if there was just one place to point people to and they had the resources with a click of a button and instructions on how to do all of these things, even beyond a Libby app? Recently, our care homes were locked to the public to keep our residents safe, and moving forward, if there was a space for them to tap into our current technology to access a different means of receiving a book or instruction how-tos by the click of a button, how much more enriched would their day be? Our eyes aren't always what they used to be anymore. Libraries are critical to our communities and diverse cultures. And the current times we live in, it connects people who may otherwise feel in and of themselves a disconnect. I asked Siri, I've been talking to Siri quite a bit this summer, so I've asked Siri why we need libraries, and this is what came from that. So on my phone, when Siri answered that question, it said, libraries offer services and products that level the intellectual playing field. That means they allow people of any income level or background access to high quality information, to use computers, or to borrow what they want. Libraries are spaces where people of all ages can practice lifelong learning. And I think being on the library, I've been grateful to be a part of that. And I have a love for libraries, and I think it's one of the biggest pieces in our community to just tie everybody together. So I appreciate your time.
thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Terry.
I've been in Dawson Creek 28 years coming up this October. And of those 28 years, I've been on the library board about 25 of those. And when I look back over the years, we've been extremely responsible with the money that the city has provided to us and with the money that the province has provided. And I take a lot of pride in that because the library wants to provide a good service in a responsible way. Now, we've talked about the need for needing another position to be able to access more of what the library provides. The take that I look at it is we want to be relevant. We're a product that a lot of people would have considered 15 years ago to be going by the wayside because books weren't necessarily as popular. People were thinking that we would be going more to the Audible books, and they have, and to ebooks. But when you look at the millennials, they're wanting to have access, and we want to be able to provide the young people in Dawson Creek with access that maybe is a little bit different than what some of the traditional ways of providing access to the library is. We all talk about the need for things for the young people in the community to be able to keep them engaged and keep them wanting to stay in Dawson Creek. And I think one of the ways that we can do that is to make sure that the places that they can have access to, they have access to just like they would if they were in a larger center. And when we look at some of the larger libraries, they're able to provide some of these services in such a way that they don't necessarily have to go into the library to be able to access them. And to me, that's really vital. My daughter came home from Edmonton, and I talked to her about the Libby app that Hannah had just mentioned, and she was thrilled because it was going to provide her with a lot more access to books without having to go out to the bookstore or to purchase them through Audible. And when she went in, because she knew that she was going to be going into the Edmonton library, she accessed it online, got a library card right there. That was as easy as it was. And that's the expectation level of a lot of the young people, whether you're in the larger cities or whether you're in a city of Dawson Creek size. What we're wanting to do is make sure that we can provide that same service to the young people in this community because we want to keep them engaged. And if we can keep them engaged and we can provide them then with all the learning aspects that any other person with any other economic situation can have, we're leveling the playing field. So I really hope that you guys take that into consideration because we really truly feel that the Dawson Creek Public Library provides such a service and such a need to all of the people within this community. If you've ever been to any of the actual live programs that we've had, they're extremely well served by the public. We have, when we've had the Christmas program we've had children fill that whole bottom floor of the library. They're thrilled to come in there. There's not a lot of places that people can feel that freedom to be able to come without having to be a part of a specific organization. And not every child in this community is part of another organization such as, you know, Girl Guides or Boy Scouts or something like that, that they would be able to have access to some of those other programs as well. So I think it is, like the library, we've worked really, really hard to keep the library relevant, and we just want to take it that next step to continue with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
So thank you for the opportunity to be here today. One of the things I wanted to bring up, so my name is Miguel Godau. I haven't only been in Dawson for 4 years, but I have loved every moment in Dawson. It's been a great home for me. I've been on library boards in this community and in other communities as well. And one of the things that libraries are kind of shifting towards is becoming community hubs. And I also work as the team leader for child and youth mental health and children and youth with special needs. And through COVID, we have shifted a lot of our practice, not just here, but province-wide, to making a more accessible service through offering services virtually, offering services through different online portals or sites so that clients can access services. And when we look at libraries being community hubs and looking at places where people go to experience different things, they go to learn, they go to have community, they go to find information, and having something that is not just for COVID, where we have an online service available for people, but an online service that's available into the future, is quite important because we need people to have equitable access to services. And I know working with children and youth and families, a lot who getting out of their homes is not quite easy. Getting out to engage with services is not always easy. So having something that gives a more accessible service, so having someone who can do that, because even though I'm younger, I'm not actually that skilled at doing online things. So you need to have someone who's actually skilled with doing the online marketing piece, kind of polling our community and seeing what are young people doing, what are families finding easiest access through any sort of online access to services. And so having someone for the library, I really want to advocate for that, because I feel that the clients that I serve and the community that I serve would greatly benefit from having a more accessible service, which then increases that equity for people to actually engage with the service, because we have a service that in the library that's always accessible, but it's not always accessible to everyone. And so if we have something that kind of shifts with our times, as Hannah said, we are moving into more of a tech age, sadly in some regards, but great in other ways. We can have someone who can market that to our patrons in the library, our library patrons in Dawson Creek and area. And so I feel that if we had, we had more access online, then we would have more people engaging with the library.
Thank you, Miguel.
So, yeah.
Thank you. So we're closing in on some time, so we'll get you to...
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, so that's how I was going to go. If you have
Yeah.
anything further, then I'll open it up to council for questions. So council, any questions? Councilor Earl?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you all for your time here today. It's great to see you. I appreciate it. COVID has been a challenge for all of us, so
Yeah.
thanks for rolling with the punches. As somebody whose day job's in a financial institution, I completely sympathize with the challenge you face over the last number of years. I mean, all of most banking has moved online. It's been a pretty dramatic transition, so I completely get where you're coming from there. Looking, just as I was looking at the report you submitted, the revenue streams, it looks like the city of Dawson Creek is the one big variable in there, and the remaining revenue streams are, for the most part, other than $1,000 here or there from them, remain static. Is that, like I see, provincial operating grant hasn't changed appreciably in 4 years? Do you know
That's
of
right.
any movement in it?
We did get a tech grant this year for $15,000 from the government. It's a one-time thing, but I don't think it's changed in many years, like maybe 10 years. I don't know. Before my time, I don't think it's ever changed. I think maybe the government might be thinking, the provincial government's thinking about maybe upping that, but they lobby every year, libraries lobby every year, and it pretty much stays the same every year. I don't think there's been a change in 10 years, so we're working with that budget, just being stagnant all this.
And as somebody who does marketing, part of my job, my full-time gig, I know in this region in particular, it's challenging because it's not a skill set that necessarily exists in abundance. There's not a pool of 300 or 400 people running around who do it for a living that you can draw from. So it's challenging to attract those people and retain them. How have you explored the option of training up one of your existing staff to do it, and
Yes.
what's available to them?
Yes, we have a casual employee right now who is in her very final library tech course class. She's got one class left. She's doing it right now. So she will be a trained library tech, but also is in her 30s and has a good, like, she's learned how to do websites and things like how to do content and manage websites in that course and things like that. And I do have her doing some stuff right now on a casual basis. Yeah, she's pretty techie, and so we would continue to try to get her training to get, learn how to use things like Canva and different things that you would use daily in that marketing role, right? Where she can create some nice looking posts and post them and make our website look professional and have links to things and do videos to show people how to use Libby, how to create an online account, all those different things. She's quite knowledgeable. She's the one who wrote up this wonderful proposal in here, in your package that I sent with our budget. So she's somebody that we've got our eye on to do this job, and I think she'd be great at it.
Thank you. Council, any further questions? Councillor Parslow?
I like the idea of it's attached in the term community hub. Right? Certainly things are changing in this world. I'm always amazed by how easy it is for me to access almost any information, any book I want, and I do that regularly. I also recognize that some people cannot afford computers, and it always strikes a chord for me about equal access. But the challenge is balancing, if you like, modernization and some traditional means. So what I understand, you're asking the city for what specifically?
For money to pay for this position. It's about $44,000. That's the wage and the benefits included to create this position.
And
it's a part-time position. I think it's 25 hours a week.
So you're going to try to enable community members to access the library without having to physically go to the library.
Right, especially during COVID when we could be doing programming. I don't know if you know, a few months ago the KPAC did their Multicultural Fusion Festival on Facebook, and you could access things like showing somebody was making bannock and somebody was making, I think it was a Filipino bun recipe, and just things like that. And I did that. I thought that was great. Like, we'd like to be able to do more of that while we're closed. And then also have people have access to things that would enrich their lives, like more ebooks, more Gale courses. It's a database where you can go and you can learn to do things like bookkeeping and like career program, school programming you could do. So there's all kinds of things that would open up if we had the time and the person who had the skills to share that more with our community.
So one final.
Sure, go ahead.
So whilst doing this, you plan on retaining your hours of operation for on-site visits to the library?
Yes. It wouldn't take away from what we were doing in person at the library, but add to it, I believe.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Pam and Terry, Miguel, and Hannah. Thank you guys, first of all, for being here today and giving us an update on the library, and obviously important for council to get that detail from the folks who are delivering it. So we appreciate you coming in this morning, and to the board members, obviously the volunteerism in a community to support our library is incredibly important, and so I want to thank you guys for doing exactly that and volunteering your time to serve on the board of our library.
They're a great board.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, including Amy over there. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Our next delegation this morning is Dale Campbell, President of the Mile Park Society, in attendance, and Dale's written a letter to us in regards to our budget, and so we'll... Good morning, Dale. So welcome.
Good morning.
Dale Campbell, President of the Mile Park Society, and on behalf of the Mile Park Society, Dale's written a letter to us in regards to the budget and asked to appear this morning as a delegation. Good morning, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to, come clear and that we realize it doesn't matter how big my tears are today, I will not leave here unscathed. We have to really respect what the city is trying to do with their financial situation. What we'd like you to do, though, is consider the depth of the proposed reduction in the fee for service. Normally, when you're looking at doing a reduction, there's a couple ways of looking at it. Well, one of the things, can we do it cheaper ourselves rather than hire somebody else doing it? Or is it an essential service? Do we have to do it? And all these things, I know that goes into all the considerations. Your staff have a heck of a job trying to cut everybody back. We understand that. One thing I don't know where the consideration was. It looks like 50,000 was a nice round number just to end up with, and because it wasn't a percentage or anything there like any other of the associations that might be operating on city assets. In this case, though, we're very unique in a lot of ways out there at the Pioneer Village. We were probably one of the closest of all of them, of all your other nonprofits that operate city assets, of being self-sustaining. But we do have a joint responsibility, and we have a joint thing out there that is costing us money regardless, and that is Rotary Lake. Under the closure order, which is the city is named under the closure order, that lake must be dry at all times, except in the winter time. That costs money. Regardless if the lake's open or not, it's still a job that has to be done. It has to be pumped out, except for in the winter time when it freezes over, we're allowed to fill it back in to preserve it. If we wanted to save some money out there, we all know that doing nothing is costing the Pioneer Village or Mauser Park Society money, because we have to maintain it. Same with Sedating Hall. We had to pay utility bills, $4,000 or $5,000 a year and no revenue. That was costing us money, and we were doing nothing, and now we got that resolved to a point. Going back to the lake, if we wanted to cut some of the operating responsibilities out of there, why not stockpile some of your sand that you're going to use in winter and put it in the hole, and then maybe the closure order would be rescinded, moved, and we wouldn't have that liability hanging over us. But right now we have a legal liability to keep it drained, and that costs us money, and the main pump went out on us, and we have to rent pumps to keep it dry. We have a spare pump, but in order to put that in, that's going to cost us more money too, that we don't have a whole lot of this year. Our revenue is so down this year, all because of the COVID and closed borders. Really, really severe cuts there. We lost over 130,000 in revenue. From year to date, we would have about 200,000 in RV income, and we have 68,000. We have year to date 98,000 in expenses for the whole operations. So you add on the city fee for service that we have received, and we've got about 40,000 to carry us over just on operations until about June next year, when we get our next source of revenue, meaning any fee for service plus RV revenue. We don't know what that is. We are going to be able to carry ourselves through until then, as it currently sits. We have enough reserves and receivables that we should be able to maintain another 80, 90, 100,000 in expenses until we get some more revenue. This is, it's not the city's fault of COVID, but it's a reality that we're facing out there. And we don't know what next year is going to bring at all. Our other revenue and our RV site, we have cut all the expenses back that we could, but as an essential service, we had to be open, and we cut services out there. We cut the no washroom facilities, so the campers are not allowed to have a shower in that because it was costing so much to keep the sanitation part. In that, we left the laundry open, but not the washroom facility itself. A year ago, we were one of the highest RV sites in town. We wanted to be competitive so that there was no feedback. And because of no washrooms, we're giving a little discount for that. You've got to remember that our RV park is our source of revenue, and 50% of those stalls don't have sewage. So, you know, there's other places in town that have year-round deep water facilities, so people can come in later and stay all year, but we're just very seasonal, 5 months is all we can operate that to create the revenue for the whole year. So you know, if it was a 5 or 10% reduction, we would have to say, hey, we got to take one for the team here and, you know, be part of the community. We understand that, but we just have a legal responsibility out there. I don't believe the city could do that, keep the lake dry, keep the mowing and all that down for less than $50,000. And never mind operating a splash park in that. We're trying to do what we can do. There's lots of things coming up. The lightning strike took out a windmill, so it looks ugly up there, and you know, all the blades are broken off it. We have ribbon around it, so nobody's going to get hit with something falling. That's on hold because we can't put the money towards it this year. The other thing is we're hoping to get back occupancy of Sedate Hall, but now one expense after the other. We have now it's costing us a couple extra thousand just to put grates over the sumps that were the city installed in the last couple of years. So we have to do that, and had to put fire exit lights and everything in the basement that never had it before. And we'll never have occupancy of the basement again. But hopefully we'll get some revenue out of it. And we save that building with, you know, save the city hundreds of thousands of dollars even for demolition of the building. And hopefully we'll get some revenue to cut some more expenses. We just really would have you, you know, consider some of the things that are out there, some of our joint responsibilities, and see if there's a way of reducing that reduction.
Thank you, Dale.
I got a Kleenex. Anybody want more?
We all got them right here for us. Knew you were coming. Council, any questions? Councillor Earl?
Not so much a question as a comment, just to respect to your letter and your presentation here today, Dale. Thank you for your time. And if I'm misremembering, please somebody correct me, but I think the rationale behind the cut as proposed had to do with the fact that with Rotary Lake no longer functioning, the assumption was that the cost to maintain that area would be reduced. And I have to be quite honest, it did not occur to me that you guys were incurring costs to pump out what was previously Rotary Lake even dry, when I think that was given the go-ahead. And similarly, you mentioned in your letter that you guys pay all the utilities out there. That was also not something I was aware of, and something that is relatively unique compared to many of the fee-for-service city facilities and stuff. So you certainly give me something to consider in the letter, and it's always good to see it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Parslow?
More to staff, actually, as a result of this presentation. Is it feasible to use the Rotary to reduce the fairly significant costs of pumping out and so on, to save the city from being in violation of Northern Health's order to store sand in that lake? Which ultimately, I mean, the lake will have to go one day. I mean, is it a feasible proposition? This is to staff.
I will look to Kevin to answer that.
So through your worship, if we were talking about storing road sand, I would say no, only because it's a hole and so it's going to fill with water. And then in the winter, when you're using it, it's going to be a block of ice. But depending on what council's direction is moving forward with the site, we could get to a spot where if we were having construction projects and you needed somewhere to put clay that you were removing and ultimately filling that, certainly something we could look at.
Yeah, I think the aspect too, as Kevin's indicated, and then the other thing, how do we get the sand and stuff in it without damaging? But it's going to go anyway. Yeah. I think the bigger thing for us is, and one thing we can do is certainly get to Northern Health and say, look, this, although your order says we must drain it, we're not going to allow the use of it. But if we kept it from incurring these additional costs of having to drain it all the time, perhaps we can get an exemption from them to forcing us to keep it dry, right? Potentially, but I think that's another option for us that we should pursue in terms of that cost item. Absolutely. Further comments, further questions for Dale? So thank you, Dale, for coming in this morning, and we appreciate obviously the time, effort, and energy that you put in down there, and all of the volunteers, and it's building an important amenity to the city of Dawson Creek, and we appreciate the effort you put into it. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thanks, Dale.
Thanks, everyone.
Item 3, new councillor business.
No.
Councillor Parslow, then Wilbur, then Kemp, then Earl.
Write that down.
Go ahead.
I just, everyone in the community, I'm sure, is pleased about the Dawson Creek Hospital. I know I am, and look forward to its operation. But I'd like to have a hospital that's going to be able to provide the services that we're currently enjoying. I'm not going to name names, but I've had some conversations with friends within the medical profession. And I'm concerned that it would suggest that council get proactive in trying to retain orthopedic and other services that are planned to be moved to Fort St. John. I think we need to do all we can to sustain what we have and maybe even get more services here, not less. So I would like you to, Mayor, if we can make a decision about that, because I think we need to be on guard for the community and be proactive in making sure that this great new facility has services for people and we don't have to travel unnecessary to Fort St. John. That's the first point. The second is to do with NDIT. I took part in the NDIT Northeast meeting on Friday, and there wasn't much business, but there was an awful lot of discussion over not a presentation, but a deposit to the agenda from the Northern BC Tourist Association. And there was a expression of interest in doing a study about the corridor from Prince George to the Alaska Highway North. And April Moy, I think, would be the person involved, or was maybe the proponent. It was pointed out by a number of people that there's been many studies around the marketing the Alaska Highway for tourism and around branding it, and it was almost unanimous suggestion that the proponents of this present what their scheme is, the necessity for it to municipal governments before NDIT would consider funding the study, because as Mayor Ackerman said, ultimately the proposal will include funding by municipal governments to help fund whatever's been suggested. But she and others would like to see what has been accomplished as a result of all the other studies. So that's basically the meat of the meeting. There was only one application from funding from Westmo, which was granted related to communication. So that's my report.
Thank you. And so on the hospital, I'll just speak very quickly in response to that. But so I have been in constant and regular contact with Dr. Coates, who's the Chief of Staff for Dawson Creek, about the medical recruitment, and certainly his words to me are as late as last week were our physician complement is in good shape still. We have the physicians, and we'll probably start to see some of them leave within the next 2 or 3 years as they plan their next phases. And the new hospital will have modern, state-of-the-art, all of the operating facilities emerge and all that stuff. And I have not heard or seen that from anybody that Northern Health are planning to move the orthopedic services out of here at all. I'm not. That's so.
I'll tell you what I heard.
Yeah. Well, I didn't hear that from Dr. Coates, the Chief of Staff. So, but one thing that is really significant is the RNs, and so we are really in both all over the north, but in certainly in our community, Fort St. John, we're in dire need of RNs. And I was at the hospital last week and met with Kendra and the head of the Emerge department about recruitment of RNs, and I'll speak to that a little later in the coming months about some process. We just through the economic development function of Peace River Regional District, we put forward an initiative to put 50 grand into the South Peace Division of Family Practice, because we meet with them on a regular basis, and that's Fort St. Chatwin, Tumbler Ridge, and Dawson Creek, and we put 50 grand into there from economic development to assist with physician recruitment for the South Peace. So that's one example of some of the things that we're doing to work with physician recruitment for the region. And so we continue to pay attention to it, and obviously it's been an important topic for us through the Peace River Regional District as well as us. And at the RD, we put 100 grand a year into scholarships for RNs, LPNs, home support workers. We put 100 grand into the North Peace Division of Family Practice to be able to help that resident program they have to recruit resident physicians into Northeast BC. And we put $75,000 a year into the South Peace Division of Family Practice. So there's just some things that we do and are doing as it relates to healthcare and hospital stuff in the region. Go ahead, Councillor.
So, if there's a question, or if there's any idea that there is an initiative going on somewhere that to remove some of these services, wouldn't it be reasonable to formally ask the Minister of Health or Northern Health, or both of them, about it, and say, look, you know, we're concerned that we maintain these services. In fact, some of the services, like the you know, people going up for kidney dialysis, like, you know, bringing that in as well while we're building a new hospital. Like, to me, it would just seem reasonable to ask the question, as I, you know, I can see your point. I mean, you've been discussing it, or maybe not specifically asking the question, but maybe at this point we could ask.
Yeah. Sure, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm completely clear on that. The dialysis is a provincial health services. That's not even a function that's provided by Northern Health. It's provided by provincial health services. They make the decision in terms of where you're going to deliver that service. So, but anyway, yeah, no, it's a good point, and I'm happy to take that forward and go to Northern Health with it, right?
Yep.
Dialysis is something that's it's bothered me for a number of years, because Reg Norman was having to go to Fort St. John 3 days a week. Finally, it was too much of a trip for him. He had to go down to Prince George for a period of time. to get, you know, the treatments. Like, it just seemed like it was something that should be offered here. I mean, I think there's even opportunities in some cases to do it at home with certain equipment, so surely we could try and get the service here. You know, especially considering that we're getting the new hospital.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like I say, there's certain programs, certain services they provide, and that's why they split them between Dawson Creek and Fort St. John, because it doesn't make sense to be trying to provide all the services for the region in both communities, because the struggle of attracting resources, right? And the aspect of orthopedic, it's where the specialists decide to reside is where the services sometimes are delivered as well, right? The internists decided they were going to live in Fort St. John, as one example. So, yeah. Go ahead.
I can give you more specific information privately
Yeah.
to help
Good.
formulate the question.
Sure.
But just go to the dialysis thing, because some of the people we know, the majority of patients a few years ago, this may not be the current state, came from the South Peace region. You know,
Yeah.
it made no sense that it is in Fort St. John when the majority of patients were here.
Yeah.
You know, at Tumbler Ridge, Chetwynd, Dawson Creek, rural area.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur.
Thank you. I think we've touched on the hospital, so I'll just leave that one alone. Really, I just wanted to congratulate the community on reducing the contamination and recycling by 10%, and I hope they're keeping it up this week. It was pouring rain at 6:30 this morning, but the trash pandas were out there. I did get a few questions over Facebook. I had posted yesterday on what cannot go in your bin and what can go in your bin. And so moving forward, the team's going to work with DC Recycling to really look at an education piece for the community. So sometimes it's just that we forget. And then the understanding that, yes, the product may say it's recyclable, that just, it doesn't mean it can go in your bin. It means it can go to the depot. So we're going to be framing an education piece, and hopefully 2 or 3 pandas can come to council and let them know what that is. They're also going to be doing a live feed stream at DC Recycling, showing people what they can and cannot put in their bin. So if any of my colleagues are interested, we'll send you the date and you can come up and help us sort some recycling and show people what can go into their bins. It was interesting that before we started this program, DC Recycling had a couple dozen very large bags of garbage that came out of the recycling, the big white bags that you see up there. They're now down to 1 a day for each day. So Friday we had a little bit more, but someone had decided that some wood and stuff should come out after we had gone by. So just to let the community know, if you want to put your bin out after they've gone past, they're going to come back and check it anyways. So just get your bins out and do your best to do it right. And I think we can reduce the waste to the landfill, and I think we can reduce the cost to a local business to remove that garbage that's coming in recycling. So good on the community, but we're not there yet. We're going to keep going. And this week, 5 people, 1 for each day, will be getting a $50 gift card from a local business to go out for dinner. Last time we did gas cards, so this time it's dinner. So we're going to keep that promotion going as an incentive for people to recycle right. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaylee, and great job. Thank you.
It's coming.
Councillor Kemp.
Thank you. I just wanted to let everyone know I had the opportunity to go on 2 separate ride-alongs. I just wanted to thank Damon Worrell for that opportunity, and also for all his great work that he's doing. It was a big eye-opener for me what actually goes on in our community while I'm in bed sleeping at night. My ride-alongs happened in the evening, so it was a good opportunity to see from, I thought I knew what happened in our community, but, from taking drunk driving off the road to drug busts to domestic disputes to all of those things that happen in our community, and they deal with that daily. So I'm very thankful that we have this resource in our community, and I'm thankful to all those members that took the time to show me what they do, and let me know what goes on. I was able to actually get a demonstration of the canine unit, and I can 100% say I will never want to be chased by that dog ever in my life. He's amazing, and what a great resource again in our community that we have. So I'm just very thankful for those two separate opportunities, and good job for all of those members and what they do. And not only in those calls that they get, they have like a major amount of paperwork that they also have to do in between those. They're great time management. They're amazing with what they do. So thank you again for that. I also wanted to mention we had gone down yesterday to the pool with the grand reopening. My kids and I ventured down there, and I just wanted to give the staff kudos to what they did. It was very well organized, and despite some of the limitations, we had a great time, and we're going to go back again. It was done very, very well organized, and great opportunity. And yes, the washrooms are open. You can use the washrooms there. Something else I wanted to mention, a few residents have asked me about Halloween. So I wanted to pose the question, what we'll be doing in Dawson Creek for Halloween. This year it comes on a Saturday. So we're just wondering, I've had residents ask, should we be decorating? Do we even do that? Will there be a Halloween in our community? So I was just kind of wondering and posing the question where we could get that resources and information and what will be happening, if anybody knows.
Yeah, I think that's one that we'll have to go and do some work with the BC Centre for Disease Control, because we'll have to understand what are some of the implications of the whole component of kids out and or organizing events, because I think you're still going to be guided by 50 people if you put an event on and all of that stuff. So that's a good topic for us to maybe follow up, and maybe with Northern Health, Blair, through our bi-weekly calls with Northern Health, to pose with them and see if they've had any input from folks about what their suggestions are and how Halloween is handled.
All right, we can definitely follow up on that.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Councillor Earl.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just one or two things. Similar to Councillor Kemp, I also had the opportunity this past Saturday to accompany some of our local RCMP members from about 9 in the evening to 2 in the morning on a Saturday night. And very interesting, as Councillor Kemp said, some of the variety of files we caught and some of the investigative stuff that was fascinating. Yeah, so thank you to them. Thank you to Staff Sergeant Worrell for arranging it, and I would encourage anyone who's on council, who's interested, who's never been along for a ride-along, to do so. It's very, very eye-opening, just to see kind of once again, we hear Staff Sergeant Worrell's reports around chronic offenders and how well known some people are to them, and basically weird, some people's full-time job appears to be just going out and committing crimes, which is very strange to see. But thank you to them, really, really eye-opening. Other item, this District of Tumbler Ridge has appointed a new CAO, and hoping we could, similar to the new CAO of Fort St. John, send them a letter welcoming and congratulating her on her position. And lastly, I'll just echo Councillor Parslow's sentiment about the hospital. Great for the region, great for the city. But my last thing is Saturday morning, I had the opportunity to head down to the O'Brien School, or former O'Brien School, I guess, new site of Networks Ministries. And I got a tour from Jacqueline down there of the facility and all of the great things they intend to do there. So congratulations to everybody who made that happen. Really exciting.
Good. Thank you. Good job. Councillor, anything further? Councillor business? Thank you. Item 4, minutes. The minutes of our special meeting of Council of July 27th and August 11th for adoption, please. Move Councillor Parslow, second Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And the minutes of our public hearing of Council for August 17th for adoption. Councillor Wilbur, Councillor Earl, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. And 4.3, the minutes of our regular meeting of Council for August 17th for adoption. Councillor Earl, Councillor Kemp, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Any business arising out of the minutes for anyone? Staff, anything out of the minutes for you guys? No? Thank you. Correspondence. Item 6.1, we had a letter from Dale Campbell, president of the Mouser Park Society, that he came in and spoke to. And I think if we can, we'll receive for information at this point, because it will come back under mayor's business for the request that they've made, unless council wants to have something further. Oh no, sorry. This is this is on the building permit in the Sedate Hall. My apologies. 6.1. So council.
Receive for discussion.
Councillor Wilbur, Kemp, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Go ahead.
When I read this, something that came to mind was when it was first brought to our attention about costs and stuff. My understanding was that they had looked into the total cost of doing this project. So I'm wondering why they're now coming back and saying there was these extra costs. So my impression was that they already knew the total cost of doing the repairs that needed to be done, including this part of it. So I'm just a little dumbfounded that here again we have a group coming back afterwards saying we didn't have this piece of it.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion, council? Blair, any?
No, your worship, what they're asking for is their cost associated with this building. So they incurred the cost of the renovation. What they're requesting here is outlined in their letter. The Bear Mountain construction cost was one that they're looking for. There is costs associated with engineering, additional costs, as well as the permit itself. So that's the direct ask to council from them in this letter.
Thank you. Councillor Earl?
So just, we still retain ownership of Sedate Hall, correct?
Yes, the city owns.
Okay, so we're charging them for the permit to do work on our building?
As it stands presently, yes.
I mean, $330 is the total ask. I think the cost to demolish, no?
And the 5,200,
Oh,
5,300?
Yes. There was donated as well, it should be pointed out, there was, not from the city, but from the engineers themselves. There was time and...
$4,000.
Yes.
Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, the Bear Mountain construction quote, 28,000 was paid for. There were some additional things, but the total amount that has been paid for some unforeseen things associated with, I'm just talking here Bear Mountain construction, was in the order of 40,000. It ended up. And the Rotary Club of Dawson Creek donated to South Peace, to Mile Zero Park, I think 30,000 of it, right? So just for the record, it wasn't 28, it turned out to be about 40. And that's my, give or take a few dollars, it's 40. So these other things are additional that were not contained in the quote from Bear Mountain Construction.
So they ask of 330 and 5,300 is what's in front of council?
Yes.
Okay. Council?
I'll move that they be taken.
Councillor Parslow, second? For a second time, do I have a seconder? For a third time, do we have a seconder? Okay, the motion fails. Councillor Earl?
I'll make the motion that we reimburse the cost of the building permit at $300.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kemp, discussion? So the motion that we pay $330?
Yeah, the building permit.
Okay. Any further discussion? Councillor Earl?
I mean, the distinction between the 5,200 for engineering, I know we required that in order to move forward with the project, or it was required that that be done in order to move forward with the project, but that is within the cost of the project. I do draw a distinction between that and us charging someone to do work on one of our buildings. And I appreciate that. They probably saved us some money in doing this, but to my mind, engineering work would fall within the costs of that project.
Further discussion? Councilor Pardon?
So I would certainly be supporting this, but my understanding, I can't stand to be corrected, that this engineering report was to regain occupancy so that council or staff could allow for occupancy. Is that not correct?
Look to Ross. My understanding of what took place is the original report the city received about Sudayton Hall was the options were the costs were associated, tear it down, to bring it back was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think if people remember the original report, the society came and said they'd like to give it a shot to reopen this. They did that. The part of it was we needed and required as a city an engineered stamp to say the building was safe to be occupied, to receive occupancy. I believe that's what this is reflecting, but I'd look to Ross, who's been working on this file.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. That is correct. We've had a number of reports that have taken place there. This most recent one was a new proposal, if you will, to mitigate measures there. And so we needed an engineered stamp on that work.
So I certainly appreciate the motion council made back to say, you guys, if you can get this building back, you can get it built, then get it recovered and back open, then go ahead. We weren't going to spend the dough on it. And so now the group have gone ahead and done that work and got it open and are going to have it reopened for the public good. And it's an important amenity to me and our community. And I honestly believe this, that these guys work away, and we heard them, they're struggling with financial now. And for us, at any point, I believe that if we would have had the understanding that we could have got this building back in and at a contribution of $5,600 on behalf of the taxpayers, that would have seemed to be a very good deal, a very good day for me. And I would have supported that. I'm not ever going to second a motion normally, and so I didn't speak to it at that point, but I am speaking to it now. I think, honestly, it's a very important aspect to our community that we get these guys working away and building this amenity, and that we should support it. Councillor Javecka?
When our initial motion to demolish the building because it was deemed unsafe, and then it followed up, the society followed up with this proposal from Bear Mountain Construction to bring the building back into good condition for $30,000. It was made very clear at that point that because that was a contradiction with the initial report that we got from Force Engineering, that they would have to provide an engineered report approving that $30,000 brought the building back into safe condition. This is not something that comes after the fact. You don't do the work and then say, oh by the way, now we need an engineering report to occupy the building. That's implicit when you take our initial Force Engineering report and then decide, gee, we can accomplish this millions of dollars worth of work for $30,000. It's implicit that you get an engineered report approving this work. So I don't see where, I think it should have been included. It seems to me like it's one of those things where you start the project with a reduced amount, so you get approval, and then it, it increases exponentially after that. So I agree with the proposal for the reimbursement of the cost for the permit. And, I think we've got some questions about us charging for building permits for work on our buildings, overall, you know, with other, like we charge out at the exhibition park and other places. So that's something that, you know, I think we need to discuss, but in this case, I support the motion.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Parslow.
Just to correct the impression Councillor Javetkov has, and I'm 90% sure that I am right here. There were two pieces of work done by Force Engineering. One, and I believe I supported staff's position on this 110%, was that we needed to have the engineer indicate very clearly and draw up drawings about what work needed to be done. That was done by Force Engineering. I believe that's the part of the work that was donated. Through council resolution, I believe, or staff decision, the occupancy of the building, right, for use was pulled at that, when we first got that Force Engineering report about how much it was going to cost. So this portion is to do with the requirement for occupancy. It was never, this is not part of the construction or what needed to be done. This is for the occupancy. And you'll see on the report all these green things that it was acceptable. So the two separate pieces of work. I agree in general with the general sentiment of Councillor Javetkov, but I don't know whether it's reasonable to expect that the Mile Zero Park Society would be required to pay for getting the occupancy back for the city, because it's the city who ultimately wants the occupancy. So I'm a little confused. I don't wish to be challenging Councillor Javetkov if I'm factually incorrect, but I think that's my recollection of the history.
Mayor.
So administration, do you want to, or can you, or?
If you don't mind. So through your worship, just looking at the Force invoice that's in this correspondence, you'll see in there that from what I take from it, this is represents kind of the whole project right from start to finish. Talks about scanning the building at the beginning, drafting and design, which was required to get the permits, the engineering, the schedules, and the drawing reproduction, and then at the end they show a 4,000 in kind. So my belief is that this invoice was from start to finish the engineering required for the project.
Thank you. So I have Councillor Wilbur, Councillor Javetkov, and Councillor Earl.
Well, thank you to staff, because that's where I was going when I read the actual invoice. It looks to me, and also refers to the foundation movement investigation of Sedaiton Hall, not occupancy afterwards, which, looking at the invoice, I'm going to assume that's the part they donated, the $4,000. But this invoice, to me, as I read it and as it's presented, is for work done prior, not after. So this should have been a part of that, what was originally presented to council. So I actually concur with Councillor Javetkov. We already decided on this.
Thank you. Councillor Javetkov.
Yeah, I just, you know, you don't go through this exercise to spend $30,000 with engineering reports with the idea of leaving the building vacant. I mean, it just doesn't, you don't connect the dots. Like, if you're going to do the work, you expect to open the building.
Thank you. Councillor Earl.
Thank you, Worship. And just to Kevin and Shaylee's points with respect to the invoice, it is dated 15th May of this year, which is, to the best of my knowledge, before the work began.
Way before.
So to Shaylee's point, this to me strikes me as part of the project cost, not a supplementary cost that was tacked onto the end that they didn't anticipate, or they couldn't have anticipated.
Thank you. Further discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 6.2, we have a letter from Stephanie McGowan, councillor from the town of Comox, National Pharmacare Program.
Receive for information.
Councillor Parslow, second. Councillor Earl, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 6.3, we have an email from Ian Tostenson, President and CEO of the British Columbia Restaurant Food Service Association, regarding this request for support of expanded patio permissions.
Receive for information.
Councillor Parslow, second. Councillor Javetkov, just all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Earl opposed. It's carried. Thank you. 6.4, we have emails from Heather Tornquist, Jess and Stephen Amundsen, and Shelby Loomis regarding residents from the concerns about the off-leash dog park. Councillor Parslow?
Receive for discussion.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Go ahead.
I just was acting in the interest of council. This is
Anticipating people wanting to speak.
I mean, we have dogs which are dear to your heart and my heart, and maybe others, but this is a safety issue that I think we need to process. I mean, I was alarmed by the the information that was given here. I wondered if staff had heard about this attack on the SPCA bylaw officer. That was one of my, so I'm just put that forward as a question. Is that factually accurate, or was there some tail end of something else?
I certainly received nothing, and I don't believe through bylaw that, Kevin, I'd have to ask you on that one, but it was not brought to my attention until these letters were received.
Councillor Javetkov?
Yeah, the information in there is fairly alarming. We need to do something, I think, whether we do an investigation or maybe Councillor Parslow could go down and check it out. I don't know.
So honestly, I can speak. I've been involved a little bit with the group in some respects, following them along. And so you got a group of volunteers who have really taken a major lead here and doing a bunch of work for the dog park. They're maintaining it, they're cleaning it, they're looking after it, they're enforcing issues with respect to people who are in there that are not being appropriately responsible with their dog. So they follow it up and make sure that, say, look, if you're going to be in there, you have to muzzle your dog if it shows aggression. They are really being diligent. I think the aspect is the whole piece about people who are at the, or either going to the dog park or outside of the dog park, and then everything gets laid on the people who are trying to administer a dog park. And so I know that this incident, and I'd heard about it, they've taken the initiative to purchase signs to ensure that people are aware if you're going to the dog park and we have a bylaw, they have to be on leash, they can't be. So they're taking that initiative to try to inform and engage people who are going to the dog park to ensure that they are leashed when they're going. But this individual had 5 dogs free, and whether he was at the dog park, he was in the vicinity. So, and one of them or 2 of them went after the bylaw enforcement officer or SPCA officer. But we have I never received anything official from anybody about that. Go ahead.
So do we get any reports on their progress to putting in the permanent park at the SPCA?
We haven't yet, and I think, Paul, honestly, they're just trying to build the model of a dog park, and it's going to be a really expensive proposition for them. They've heard estimates, and they've been told it'll cost them upwards of $100,000 to fence a dog park area down there. So I think they're building the model, and I said to the group that it'd be worthwhile for them to come as a delegation and give council an update on what they're doing and how the work they're doing and what they're doing to maintain and operate the dog park as a group of volunteers. Councillor Wilbur?
So when I was doing bin checks, I actually got to meet a nice little puppy named Sadie who wasn't on a leash, and her owner was on the other side of Canelta School on her way to the dog park. So Sadie was nice, so it was okay. I'm glad that Sadie was nice, but upon walking down that street, 3 other people did pull up on the side of the road, let their dogs out, threw a ball towards the dog park and let their dogs run. And I do remember when the group did come and talk about the dog park, they said that they were going to watch it. They were going to maintain it. They were going to make sure that people were using it properly. And that is part of the proposal they give to council. I realize they're volunteers, but The focus was to raise money to move it to the SPCA, and that they were going to monitor that dog park. And with school starting, Sadie probably would have trampled a kindergarten or grade 1 student and scared the crap out of them. So, you know, she came up behind me and was friendly, but at the same time, it's just the perception. And so I realized they're volunteers, but they're going to have to put more effort in, because neighbors are going to start complaining more, because dogs are running loose from vehicles to homes to the dog park, and not one owner has leashed their dog that I seen that day while I was checking bins. So it is a concern, and I know I've had people Facebook message me and call me over it, and they live in that neighborhood. And so, you know, sad to say, but these people are going to have to up their game. They wanted it. They said they were going to put the work in, so you need to put the work in.
Well, I absolutely share Councillor Wilbur. They are putting the work in. They are absolutely, but they're not going to be there 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They're maintaining it. They're cleaning it. They're putting the effort in. So, and I think maybe it'd be worthwhile for us to get them to come as a delegation, because if it's the expectation we're going to have it monitored 7/24, we'll close it, because there's no way that you're going to have volunteers do that, right? You just can't.
That's what they offered.
I don't think they offered that. I don't think they said they'd not manage it 7/24.
No.
Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I agree it might be timely to invite the dog park volunteers back to give us an update. If I recall, initially our approval of that location for a temporary dog park had a sunset clause of about 2 years, of which they're about halfway through. So that'll give us a good opportunity to touch base and see what the next year holds potentially. I am obviously to receive this report and these letters is the first time I'm hearing of these issues. That's dismaying, and I think as part of their presentation and something we maybe need to follow up with the SPCA on too, around some sort of protocol for making sure that when those complaints are made either to the dog park people or the SPCA about the dog park, we're receiving those. Obviously, you know, there's always going to be, as you onboard or create a new amenity like this, some growing pains. But when it comes to dogs running loose and potentially attacking people, that's something we really do need to err on the side of caution about. So I'd be very, very happy for a visit from them, so we could, because I'm sure they obviously have no interest in seeing losing the community's support for the initiative. So it's in everyone's interest that we nip this in the bud before it becomes more of an issue than it is.
Can we ask Bylaw, have we had SPCA indicate that they're seeing an increase in complaints about off-leash dogs in the area, Kevin?
Through your worship, I haven't heard of any additional. I'll check with Bylaw and see, and just see if I can get more information.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons?
So what's this, I should know this, but I don't. Do we have a bylaw about whether dogs are to be leashed in all our parks, or what is the situation? Can people have dogs unleashed in Kin Park, for instance?
No, the bylaw, I think, is pretty clear that if your dog is out, it's on leash. And if they show aggression, anyway. And if they're show aggression, they have to be a muzzle.
Okay.
I believe that's.
So supplementary to that then, some things that is firing in my brain here. The idea of this dog park, right, was that it was going to be an area where the dogs could run free within the park.
Right.
One of the attractive parts of this location was that part of it was fenced, right? My question is there a date on that now, so that it truly can be contained?
So it is contained itself. It's a ball diamond. The park itself is contained. The issue is how people are getting their dogs to it. So,
right.
Yeah.
So really, then bylaw does have the authority, if they just so happen to see something, to act on it, right?
Yeah. Councillor Dueckhoff?
Could we refer this submission to their president or chairperson?
Sure.
Prior to them coming back to give us an update?
Sure. And I think that's a good idea, and then we'll ask them to come and do a presentation as a delegation to council and update us on exactly that, and Councillor Wilbur's concerns about what are they doing, how are they operating, and what are their plans. So, good. Councillor Wilbur?
I was just gonna add to that, I mean, maybe it will come down to it can only be open from 8 AM to 4 PM, or, you know, if that's what it means to monitor it, but it's just, I was shocked actually to just see people let their animals out of their vehicle and throw a ball and away they went.
And that's true in any park. You let your park, the people get up there, they let their dogs go. It's true in any park, right? I think the issue is we have a dog park that we designate as an area that would be an off leash. Doesn't change the fact that everybody is required to have our bylaws saying you got to be on leash, right?
Yeah.
So a motion to refer back to the Dog Park Society, that we would have them invite as a delegation. Councillor Kemp, Councillor Wilbur, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.5, we have a letter from CN Stephen Covey, Chief of Police and Security Officer. Councillor Javetkov?
I will propose the reading of the proclamation.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Earl? Now, our procedure bylaw says that they have to have somebody locally here present or somebody locally, Brenda, to be here for the proclamation.
Yeah, that's correct. Any requests that we do get, if they don't have a local representative, we advise them of that fact, and most times they find someone in the community that can attend on their behalf, but they were not able to find a local rep, as far as I'm aware.
So we would need to have a motion that we would vary the procedure bylaw in order to do that?
Yep.
So would we need to do that? We would need to do that ahead of the motion we currently are having in front of us?
Yes.
Yes.
So can we suspend this motion to see if council are willing to make that as a recommendation, that we suspend the procedure bylaw for this? Is that what I need?
That's correct.
If you look,
Councillor Wilbur is moving that we suspend the procedure bylaw in this instance to allow us to do this proclamation in the absence of a local representative? Is what I'm anticipating you were moving?
Absolutely, that was it.
Do I have a second?
Precisely.
Councillor Kemp? Discussion? Blair?
Your Worship, so what this is requesting is it is Rail Safety Week to be held in Canada, the United States and Mexico from September 21st to 27th. The only thing I would caution council on is if you're going to vary it for this one, I would anticipate you would vary it for every other application that doesn't have somebody coming to council. Would seem to be a bit of a precedent, which there's nothing wrong with it. We may want to alter that bylaw.
Councillor Parslow and Councillor Wilbur?
Well, just as an alternative, we could suggest to CN that they designate Councillor Javetkov as the local rep for this meeting, and he could get a CN
Mr.
hat
CN.
and come here and stand before the mayor. I mean, it's easily to resolve, but I agree, Blair's point is a very good one, right? Yeah, so I'm going to vote against it.
Councillor Wilbur, then Councillor Javetkov.
Well, just given all the changes in the world and how things are going virtually, we might find that we do have to look at that, because maybe representation will have to be done virtually and not in-house. So I'm prepared to support making the exception so that this may pass and we may educate our community on rail safety.
Thank you. Councillor Javetkov?
Yeah, and I don't see it as a precedent. I mean, this is a safety issue, and, we're all concerned about safety, obviously. There's a lot of other proclamations that aren't. They're concerned with politics or politics.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion to suspend the policy. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And on the motion that we do a resolution in support of Rail Safety Week, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 6.6, we have a letter from Joel Shandro, Dawson Creek property owner at 933 111th Avenue, in regards to the recent flooding events. Councillor Earl?
Receive for discussion.
Thank you. Second? Do I have a seconder? For a third time, do I have a seconder? Motion, are you seconding?
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this letter, and I don't want to say their letters are the same, everybody's distinct and unique in their circumstances, but this is similar to some other letters we've already received, and the decision direction I think Council gave at that time with respect to the insurance piece was to provide kind of a generic letter now that the sewer work in that area has been done and should hopefully mitigate some of the issues moving forward. While we can't reimburse this person, I do think it would be nice to be able to provide them with the same letter we gave to the other residents in that area, if nothing else.
Well, and I think the response that we do give is that we are covered by insurance, the city through our Municipal Insurance Association, and we refer any demands on us to them for reimbursement. Blair, Brendan?
Well, what we're doing, and I'll check with Kevin, we did check through MIA for the letter. Council asked us to look into the possibility of providing the residents that have been impacted with a letter stating the work we've done. Kevin, I'll look for an update. Have we reached that point of being able to draft and have that letter sent out, or what was the response? I believe there is some legal liability concern, certainly.
Yes, so through your worship, we've been working with MIA and legal counsel just to put a letter together that's appropriate for the particular homeowners and the letters that council had received. So we're hoping that that can be crafted, finalized this week,
Okay.
and then be able to be sent out.
This, Mr. Chandro's specific request was reimbursement of about $20,000. And we refer that to MIA, I'm assuming, for request for funding.
This would be between insurers. So he would then, we wouldn't refer this to MIA to say, will you pay him 20? My understanding is that's not how it would go, but Kevin, I could be corrected there.
Yes, so through your worship, we'll certainly forward this on to MIA, but my understanding through the letter is this gentleman didn't have insurance for backup, so MIA may deal directly with this individual rather than their insurer, but we'll make sure that MIA gets the information.
Good. So, motion, direction? Refer to administration to respond appropriately, either through to MIA or directly to Mr. Chandra.
Yeah, sure, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Kemp, discussion? Blair, any?
No, it's my understanding though is I'm not hearing that the city is going to go for the $20,000. This is an MIA and insurance issue. We'll ask them to deal with it directly.
Yeah.
Yes.
As we would with every
Yes.
instance of that, right?
And it's been unfortunate, I mean,
Yeah.
without question, but
Yeah.
the insurers deal with insurers.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. So we're at 10:30. Do you want to take a 6-minute break, 7-minute break, and recess? And we'll reconvene at 10:40. Thank you. Item 7, reports. Report number 2168 from the city planner regarding a development variance permit for 1417 Chamberlain. Councillor
I
Parslow.
move the report 20-168 from the city planner, redevelopment variance permit 20-08 Ashley Harper be received. Further development variance permit 20-08 be approved to vary zoning bylaw number 4450, 2020 section 8.21 by reducing the minimum interior side parcel line setback for an accessory building in the RS2 zone from 1.2 meters to 0.95 meters at a newly created parcel to be addressed as 1417 Chamberlain Drive.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Javetkov. Discussion. I did receive the one phone call from Mr. Ward, and he's written his letter in here concerned about the density of duplex with that zoning in the area. Further discussion?
Your worship, if I could
Go
point
ahead,
out,
Blair.
What we're dealing with, though, is not the zoning is already there. I think that's a very important fact. Council is not determining to go from an RS1 to an RS2. It is RS2 already.
Yeah, and I explained that to Mr. Ward. Just wanted to speak to it because he did send his letter in. Any further discussion? Councillor Wilbur?
Through your worship to staff, do we have any concerns that this is going to create a ripple effect for us down the road? I always ask that with these zoning amendments because we're dealing with encroachments and all of this different stuff. And when we look to the future, do we have any concerns that down the road this could cause an issue?
So through your worship, each one of these variances are dealt with as, on their own merits. This is a pre-existing garage. It's been there for many, many years. So this process is just legalizing it. So I guess the only thing I would say is if we don't foresee any issues with it. If there was a building application on the neighboring lot, it might be something, and I say might be something that we'd have to consider the proximity of two buildings because this one's slightly closer to the property line. Those are those types of things we'd have to look at.
Okay. Thank you very much. I just like to have it out there so if people ask, they know why we did what we did.
And there's no way to know whether this variance would have, whether the garage that was built that we have to give the variance for was legal at the time it was constructed or not in terms of the setback.
So, through your worship, yeah, and I don't have that information in front of me. I suspect that I'm going to go out on a limb and say it probably wasn't, or perhaps the zoning bylaw was silent on that at the time. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
And it's the fact that we're subdividing it that changes the property that you need to now have the variance. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And 7.2, we have report number 2169 from the city planner regarding temporary use permit for the same property. Councillor Parslow?
I move that report number 20-169 from the city planner, re temporary use permit 2005 be received. Further, that temporary use permit 20-05 to allow for an accessory building to exist for a period of 36 months prior to the construction of the principal building at a newly created parcel to be addressed as 1417 Chamberlain Drive be approved.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Jackloff. Discussion?
Bless you.
The aspect of 36 months in terms of this, if they don't proceed and if they don't do this, how do we resolve the issue then of removing or demolish or this temporary use?
Kevin.
So I'm going to ask Nick on this one, if that's okay, Nick.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So a temporary use permit can be issued for a period of up to 36 months. However, as we have seen with some other applications, people can apply to renew the temporary use permit or even apply for a new one after it's expired. So this really, they have the intent to build a house within about 2 to 3 years. So this really is just required to allow them to create that parcel with that structure on there before the principal house. So there is options always to extend it in the future, or if we absolutely didn't want to do that, we could force them to take it down in the future. So there are options in this regard.
Yeah, so we ran into this at the RD where we were getting temporary use permits extended 3 and 4 and 5 times, and so if it's extended to me more than once to twice, that's not a temporary use permit anymore. That's now beginning to be permanency. And my concern is if the applicant doesn't move forward with it and we have to enforce and we don't want to give another temporary use permit, then we are required then to enact and demolish the building or do something with it then?
I think, Your Worship, the option would be the temporary use permit as presented would mean there will be a structure on it within 36 months. If there isn't and it wasn't extended, the owner would have to take the garage down Failing that, it would go on the taxes of the individual. There's also legal ramifications and ways we can go versus instead of historically, Your Worship, it is, if there's a cost to the city, it then goes on the taxes of the, if the individual has assets and holds assets, the city has the ability legally to go after those assets if there's a debt owing to the city.
Sure. Do we have any requirements, Brenda, on extending a second temporary use permit to a time frame? So I guess if we extend this for 3 years, the second one then can't be 3 years, it can only be for 1 year or 2 years. Do we have anything in our bylaw that would, on the second extension of a temporary use permit?
I believe it would be able to be extended on the same term. Is that correct?
So a temporary use permit can only be extended one time. The city can identify the time period of the extension. If the temporary use permit expires, then the applicant would have to apply for a new temporary use permit rather than an extension. And any extension or new permit, the city can set a timeline up to 3 years, which is the maximum.
Thank you. Good.
Possibly, Your Worship, with the discussion I'm hearing, the individual who will separate these lots, subdivide the lots, it may want to be would it be registered on title, the TUP? It would, just in case that lot is sold then and the purchaser would be aware.
Yeah, just the only point to me is you don't want this going on for 9 years, 12 years, 15 years, where you got the temporary use permit getting extended every 3 years, it's not temporary then anymore, right? Thank you, Nick. Further discussion? Councillor Wilbur?
I'm just going back over the attachment. So is the temporary use permit for the garage that's existing on the property?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Further comments, questions? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And report 7.3, we have report number 2174 from the city planner regarding the development permit for 1024, 1028, 1032, 1036, 104th Avenue. Councillor Javetkov.
I'll move that report number 20-174 from the city planner, read development permit 20-03, BC Housing, 1024, 1028, 1032, and 1036 on 104th Avenue be received. Further, the development permit 20-03 allowing the development of a 32-unit supportive housing apartment building at 1024, 1028, 1032, and 1036 104th Avenue be approved.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur. Discussion? Councillor Javetkov.
Just a question on the development permit. Is there a elevator in that building?
So, through your worship, I'd have to take a quick look at the plans and see. I didn't look to it at that sort of detail. And at this stage, when we're dealing with the development permit, they're really providing us the look and feel of the building, and they may not have those sorts of details or even finalized. Do you know, Nick?
Yes, yes, Your Worship. The plans, I believe, do not show an elevator in the building. However, there are accessible suites in the building which are located on the ground floor.
Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor? Sorry. Opposed? Did you have a question?
Just really quickly, with respect to one of the comments received specifically from Qantas Child Care Center about some of the activity they currently see down there and their concerns that this will be exacerbated by the building of this location. So it is in close proximity to the shelter and amenities that would be used by people who are homeless currently. So, but similar to the issue of the dog park, it is distressing to hear these suggestion that the child use needles, drug and alcohol paraphernalia around the Bay Area. It's always just dismaying to hear these for the first time in a report. Certainly, I would hope these are being reported to the RCMP, and similarly, that people are, if they're finding this is an ongoing problem in any part of the community, that they're reaching out to members of council, because we're not mind readers, and it is distressing to see have this show up on a report for the first time and not having heard about it. But that's my only comment I wanted to make.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur?
I just for clarity purposes, these things are happening all over the community. They're happening even in our recycle bins. And so I err on the side of caution that we would point a finger at people who are homeless or at risk of being homeless as being the culprits of doing this. As two of my colleagues who did ride-alongs have said, you know, they've seen repeat offenders when they were driving with the police. So I just want to err on the side of caution to our community that we shouldn't point fingers just because someone is at need of being lifted up or needs assistance, and what people perceive as homelessness isn't always the case. So I just want to put that out there because we're only as strong as our weakest link, and so let's not be the weakest link.
Yep. Further comments, further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.4, we have report number 2176 from the Public Works Manager regarding our water valve replacement. Councillor DeVetko?
Move that report number 20-176 from the Public Works Manager water valve replacement be received. Further, that council award request for quotations 20-40 water valve replacement to C. Chandler Contracting, Celtic Construction Limited for the negotiated and mutually agreed upon reduced scope price of $219,616.39 plus applicable taxes.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Earl, discussion? Kevin, Blair, it's part of our major project of water valve replacement.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so through your worship, we're trying to, get through some of the most problematic water valves that we have, and so we'd put out a tender for, I think we originally had around 20-25 valves, and we had one bid from Celtic Construction. It was higher than what we'd anticipated, so we were able to work with the contractor, pare that down to a lower number, but still dealing with some of our more critical ones. And so that's what you see in front of you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Further discussion, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. 7.5, we have report number 2177 from the Public Works Manager regarding our lagoons condition assessment. Councillor Kemp?
I'll move that recommendation that report 20-177 from the Public Works Manager regarding lagoons condition assessment be received. Further, that council award request for quotations 2020-41 lagoons condition assessment to Urban Systems Limited for the amount of $53,800 plus applicable taxes.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Wilbur, discussion? Comments? Councillor Parslow?
So this study is not related in any way to the permits that we have that govern the amount of effluent we can put into the lagoon, right? This is just, we're not addressing that in any way about capacity or advocacy for adjustment of the license that we have?
So through your worship, certainly that'll be a part of it. I mean, we're going to be looking at, the intent of this study is to look at a snapshot of the lagoon, what the current condition is, what the longevity of it is, looking at future growth of the community, how much capacity we have moving forward, and potentially what we need to do as a community as we move forward. The permitting all plays into that, depending on what we see as far as, I guess, the current status of the lagoons. And if we have to look at a major upgrade in the not-so-distant future, then obviously that whole permitting piece, possibly liquid waste management plans and things will all play into that. So that'll speak to it.
Thank you, Kevin. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. 6. Report 2180 from the General Manager regarding the lagoon drying bed restoration. Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Worship. I I'll move that report 20-180 from the General Manager of Development Services be received. Further, the council approved the change in scope for the lagoon's drying beds restoration RFQ number 2020-43 to include the additional work for HF Nodes construction to complete the additional 4 drying beds, $43,540.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Kemp, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.7, we have report 2165 from the General Manager of Community Services regarding a Community Culture and Recreation grant application. Councillor Earl.
Received for discussion.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just a question for you to staff. So from what I can gather, the province and the provincial government at the maximum would contribute up to 73.33% of the cost of this project. So the remaining the remaining amount we would be required to come up with, is that currently something we have allocated in our capital plan at any point over the next couple of years, or is this a new item we're looking at?
This is something that has been, I think goes back to 2015, 2016. Ross, if you want to touch on that, but I believe it is. This is a request to apply for a grant that would offset that capital funding we've put in the budget, but
Thank you. Yes, through your worship, it is identified. $2.2 million has been identified, so the complete project. 73% would equate to about $1.6 million, which would leave the city responsible for $600,000.
When we did the original, when we had the leak at the arena and the ammonia leak on our headers, and we had to replace the compressors and the chillers. Oh no, sorry, it was in the compressor room, and so we had to close the rink down and the curling rink. And it was identified through that process that the slabs in the Memorial Arena, the curling rink, and the Kin Arena were all going to have to be probably replaced within that next 5 or 10 year period. And the curling rink applied for the funding in the Build Canada, I think, or something, and got 75% of the funding and got that done 3 or 4 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember when. And so this was part of that projection, I think, that we were going to have to replace the slabs in the Memorial Arena and the Kin Arena. Councillor Parslow.
Yeah, I asked Blair a number of questions about this ahead of the meeting, and I believe it's this expenditure's been put into our capital expenditure plan. So I wondered if I'd missed something, if we had been setting aside money for this project, because you're correct, it was identified as a to-do. But of course not of course, shouldn't say of course we don't. So this is coming out of the capital envelope for next year, right?
2021 capital,
yeah.
Yes.
I have a question related to this though.
Yep.
Again, I'm always wondering about my memory these days, but I'm just going to read from this report, okay? Mayor Bumstead noted the passion in the community for the ice facilities and the sports they host. He pointed out the volume of information gathered by the city and noted the importance of also, now this is my question, also getting the recreation needs assessment done to help plan for future building needs and trends/demographics in sport. The only report I can recall was done by that consultant, Johnson,
Yeah,
is it?
so
Is that the report
Yeah,
that's addressed
so he
here?
did that report and talked about the dry floor space, the ice, the number of users, and all. He did that full analysis of that, and we based that then on the decision to invest the $6 million, I think it was, in the compressors and chillers and all of that stuff, based on that information.
The way this was worded, I was thinking there was something that hadn't been done, but then as I began to speak, I remembered the Johnson work, which was good work.
Yeah, yeah. Councillor Javeco?
So the 2.2 million that Ross mentioned there, is that the original cost, or has it been updated to today's numbers?
Thank you, through your worship. I believe that number has been updated to today's numbers. About a week and a half ago, I was able to contact the gentleman from BST Consulting, which was the company that did the study for us initially. I've yet to follow up with him, but I'll try and confirm, I will confirm some more current estimates at that.
And then the other question is there any preliminary work, like as far as engineering requirements to apply for the grant?
Through your worship, I'm not sure that the engineering requirements are required to apply for the grant. I'm working with our grant writer right now on those details. And I sat in on a webinar, webinar here a couple of weeks ago with a consultant, I suppose, who walked us through the application process, and it's really about public good, community good, recreation, those sorts of things. So.
Thank you, Ross. Any further comments, questions? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, Brenda?
Your worship, that was...
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, we just discussion. You're right. I thought we had a motion. The way everybody was moving ahead. Councillor Earl.
I will move that report number 20-165 from the General Manager of Community Services regarding community culture and recreation, CCR grant application be received. Further, that council directs staff to make application for grant funding for replacement of the Memorial Arena concrete slab through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community Culture and Recreation. Further, that council supports the project and commits to its share of the project.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur, discussion. You ready for the question again? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Report number 7.8, report 20-178 from the Deputy Corporate Officer regarding our closed circuit surveillance cameras. Councillor Wilbur?
I move that it be received for discussion.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Go ahead.
Expensive. That was my first reaction, and I know other communities have done it. So yeah, I just don't know where it fits in with what we're doing budget-wise right now. It's a very expensive endeavor. That's all I got. Sorry.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Javekov?
So this is on the cameras?
Yeah.
Yeah, so $100,000 doesn't seem very much to put cameras all over Williams Lake. So this must be directed at an area that they had problems with, or what's sort of the concept there?
I'll flip it to staff.
Staff, I believe Cindy looked into this and was in direct contact. I would need to refer to her as to how many cameras they've actually installed, but the request from council was to look at what possibilities and look to Williams Lake that had installed this to help their community. So I would need Cindy in here to answer the questions as far as how many cameras were installed. Also, the fact would be if council chose to pursue this, there'd be a far more in-depth report. At that point, we didn't want to spend a great deal of time, of staff time, developing a report that council really was just after what's happened in Williams Lake.
Councillor Javekov and Councillor.
So I guess, my question would be, do we have an area that we're looking at specifically that is a problem? And has it been discussed with the RCMP? And if we do, and we publicize, and we put up cameras there, and we publicize the fact that there's cameras, are we going to have any more problems? Because it seems obvious that people would move the problem somewhere else.
Can we just try buying the signs first?
Councillor Wilbur?
Well, I just want to add too, it's the initial investment that it looks, to me is 100,000, but then when we look at technology, there's going to be that upkeep. So from what I'm reading is it's not something that's monitored. It's if there's a major incident, then they go look at the footage. So that means having the server and the technology constantly upgraded and able to record that, right? So I think I think if a further report was done, I'd probably find that it's more than this initial cost. This is just kind of the initial setup. And I don't know if there's a specific area that we would want to monitor. I mean, I know we have cameras on the curling rink that monitor the skateboard park, and I know, you know, other businesses have outside security too that are there available. So I'm not, is this something that we're looking at putting at intersections? Is it something, so I don't understand how far we want to take it, I guess.
Councillor Parslow, then Councillor Earl.
Well, this is a very valuable tool to give the RCMP. One of the ways the school district dealt with the cost of cameras and installation was that we bought 5 cameras. We had locations for 50, and we rotated the cameras so that people never knew where they were. But I'm not talking about buildings here, I'm talking about school buses. They were put into school buses for surveillance of behavior of students, and were very useful deterrent, especially when parents who automatically defend their child are shown the video of what their child has been doing, right? But it just seems to me to be a possibility. You could have a number of places where they could be installed and just have a small number of cameras, and through advisement with the police move them to different parts of the community. I thought though having these cameras was more to do with traffic than their use. My daughters will say they're very useful in dealing with some investigations with crime, but I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor, that the initial impetus was at some troublesome intersections. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was both, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Earl, then Councillor Javetkov.
No, I was just going to thank staff for the information. I don't know. I was similarly going to question Councillor Parslow because I was foggy on whether or not this was directly related to property crime or it was, as he said, with respect to some troublesome intersections that seem to happen. Yeah, my mind is kind of with Councillor Wilbur on this. I don't know if we're there yet, and I'd be interested when we return to having committee of the whole meetings to get Staff Sergeant Worrell's thoughts on how much of a utility this would be for him, or how much of a useful tool this would be for him and his staff. But I do obviously expect before we would pursue something like this, there would likely be many questions from the public and business owners and things of that nature with respect to how it's going to be utilized. So I do appreciate the information in here around how it's accessed and what the controls are in order to ensure people are maintaining their privacy.
Thank you. Councillor Javetkov?
Just a point, we have had a request from businesses in the past to put some cameras up on that 1000 block of 102nd Avenue. And after the CAO at that time did the research, we didn't proceed with it because of the privacy issues.
Yeah, I think to me the one piece to me that is difficult is location, and you would really want to be guided by the RCMP in that. $6,000 a pop, so if you put 6 or 8 cameras in, you're putting a pretty minimal impact unless you really focus an area in terms of downtown. But 6 or 8 cameras, you're talking 30 to 40 grand plus 20 or $60,000-$70,000. I would really want to know, I guess that's the report doesn't speak to that, is how is the RCMP in Williams Lake found it as a valuable tool for them? It says it has, but what are some of the real tangible results that it's been able to deliver? And those are questions for me, but it seems like it's expensive to, and when you talk about 4 or 5 cameras, that's not very many, and covering an area that your crime seems to move around your community. So I just have some questions about that before I want to pop 60 or 70 or 80 grand into the budget. And then who's going to monitor it? we have to have staff or somebody monitoring it and utilizing it. And Blair?
Your worship, just note, when the question was asked how many cameras, I mean, although the report doesn't lay out how many cameras, the bullet that you referred to, bullet point, there's approximately $20,000 worth of hardware required for each camera. So if each camera is $6,000, followed by $20,000, the $100,000 you could look at, I mean, although you'd think it would be 5, I would think there would be installation costs and so on. So I'm gonna guess and extrapolate from those numbers that we're talking about 4 cameras here for that price.
Excuse me, through your
Brenda?
worship, I just received a text from Cindy, and there's 6 cameras in one.
6,
Yeah.
okay.
Councillor Barzil?
Just a question, maybe you may know a bit more about this, staff might. The ones I've seen in Grand Prairie are all, I think the focus is clearly traffic. You know, as you go into Grand Prairie, just before the turn right to Grand Cache, there's traffic because it's an accident area. We're concerned about 17th Street, Alaska Avenue, right? Maybe some other streets, but I know we are about that one. Is there a partnership with the Ministry of Highways Transportation over the installation of these cameras?
So we in the past have approached...
ICBC?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
We have approached Ministry of Transportation in the past. I believe we are doing it again at the request of council, Kevin, unless we've had a response. This discussion on this was not the 17th Street or 15th Street intersection cameras. That was a separate issue.
Oh, okay.
Just so that unless
Yeah.
that's the direction, because we've had 2 different requests from council now. One was to pursue intersection cameras, 15th and 17th, of which we've reached out to MOTI. This request came, it was based on security cameras based on, I'll say, criminal activity in our city, is what was pursued there.
So perhaps if we could move it along, we'll ask Damon at the next committee of the whole that we would have this as a topic of discussion for Damon to get some additional feedback from them as a tool that we utilize or could utilize, or would they find if they could give us some feedback, and then council can give some direction after that. Councillor Earl?
And yes, if I'm sure staff remember, but just refer this report to Damon so he knows what we're asking him about.
Yeah. So motion to refer till after our next committee of the whole when we have Staff Sergeant Morrill here. Councillor Kemp, Councillor Earl. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. 7.9, we have a report memo from the corporate officer regarding the expression of interest on Play On Canada. Councillor Parslow.
I move that the memo from the corporate officer, the expression of interest Play On Canada hockey event be received. Further, the decision to provide the Minister of Canadian Heritage a letter to express interest for the city of Dawson Creek as a host venue for the Play On Canada event in 2021 be ratified.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur. Discussion. And I think we just hopefully see the results of them moving forward with this at some point in 2021, and Dawson Creek gets considered as a venue. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.10, we have a memo from our corporate officer regarding a grant application for skills training. And
I have to claim conflict.
go ahead. Councillor Parslow.
The memo from the corporate officer, the letter of support grant application for skills training in Dawson Creek be received. Further, the decision to provide O'Bear Economic Society with a letter of support for their grant application to support those entering into a Red Seal Trades program in the region be ratified.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Earl. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you.
Wilbur.
She didn't leave the building, did she? I thought you left the building.
I did. Flash.
7:11, we have report number 2179 from the corporate officer regarding arrangements for our 2020 by-election. Councillor Wilbur?
I'll take the long one. I will, I will move that report number 20-179 from the corporate officer be received. Further, that pursuant to the ministerial order number M335, the council permit voting by all eligible electors under the act to be done by mail ballot, and in relation to this, may permit elector registration to be done in conjunction with this voting. Further, that council permit the elector, as directed by the election official responsible, to make an oral declaration that the elector is entitled to vote in the by-election when obtaining a ballot for voting, in which case the election official responsible must make a record that the elector made an oral declaration, and further, that council permit the City of Dawson Creek's chief election officer to establish or remove one or more special voting opportunities.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. Discussion?
It's been a long road to a by-election.
Yeah.
Whose fault is that? No.
COVID. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 712, we have report 2170 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding the Dawson Creek confidential shredding contract.
Want me to leave on this one?
What's that?
Do you want me to leave on this one? On the board?
He sits on the board of Society for Community Living.
Yeah.
Not as bad conflicts as she was.
Worse.
I'm always worse.
Councillor Earl?
Will move the recommendation that report number 20-170 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding City of Dawson Creek confidential shredding contract be received. Further, that city staff be authorized to enter into an agreement with the Dawson Creek Society for Community Living for the provision of paper shredding services required by the city for a one-year term commencing as soon as practicable. Further, that the contract automatically renew on an annual basis unless terminated by either party by written notice at least 30 days prior to the expiration of either initial term or any renewal term.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. Discussion? Blair?
Your Worship, this, we had a request put before us to ask council to consider this. We investigated, looked at it. It seems to be a very worthwhile opportunity for us to utilize our in-town people to do it. But not only that, as the report says, it's an opportunity for those that have challenges to have employment. And I can't, think of a better opportunity for the city to use a service than something like what we're talking about here. So the Society for Community Living will look after that.
Absolutely. Good job. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you.
Let me get him.
Yeah.
Or not. He left the building.
Brent.
Get fresh air.
Item 8.1 is our land sale bylaw for the 1024 to 1036 properties, and we need to refer this to our next meeting just because we're waiting for some additional information from them. So if I can just have a motion that we refer to our next meeting. Councillor Kemp, Councillor Wilbur. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.2, our sewer rate and regulation amendment bylaw 4455 for adoption.
So moved.
Councillor Wilbur moves. Second. Councillor Earl. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 8.3, our bylaw enforcement amendment bylaw for adoption. Councillor
moved.
Parslow. Second. Councillor Wilbur. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And our municipal ticket information system amendment bylaw for adoption. Councillor Parslow. Second. Councillor Wilbur. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 8.5, report number 2156 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding our permissive tax exemption bylaw number 4453. Councillor Wilbur.
I move that report number 20-156 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding permissive tax exemption bylaw number 4453-2020 be received. Further, that the permissive tax exemption bylaw number 4453-2020 be given first three readings, and further that staff be directed to publish the notice as required under section 2271 of the Community Charter.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Earl. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 8.6, we have report number 2166 from the city planner regarding our official community plan amendment 2001 for Chamberlain Park. Councillor Earl.
I'll move the report number 20-166 from the city planner regarding official community plan amendment 20-01. Yeah, sorry. 20-01 bylaw number 4459/2020 be received. Further, that official community plan amendment 20-01 bylaw number 4459/2020 be given first and second reading.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Wilbur, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 8.7, report number 2167 from the city planner regarding zoning amendment bylaw 2003 Chamberlain Park.
Sure.
Councillor Wilbur.
I will move that report number 20-167 from the city planner regarding zoning amendment 20-03 bylaw number 4460/2020 be received. Further, that zoning amendment 20-03 bylaw number 4460/2020 be given first and second readings.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Kemp, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. And report number 2167, sorry, we just did 167. 172 from the corporate officer regarding land sale bylaw for Chamberlain Park encroachments 4461/2020. Councillor Javetkov.
Move the report number 20-172 from the corporate officer re land sale bylaw Chamberlain Park encroachments number 4461/2020 be received. Further, that bylaw number 4461/2020 be given first 3 readings.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Wilbur. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item 9, mayor's business, and so I've been working on an Access Employment virtual event with organization nationally, and what they do is they link up international professionals who are looking to immigrate to Canada or here are looking for to connect with employers, and so we've taken that on as an opportunity to try to attract and find, train educated professionals with prospective employers. So we've sent out letters to all of prospective employees or employers, and we're working on setting a date sometime hopefully in October, and we'll gauge that by the response we get from the business community. And you know, we've reached out to places like the school district, the hospital, the industry, and folks like that, and sent out letters, and so we're just working away on it, and it's just an opportunity to try to connect those international professionals to our community and prospective employees. I met with the superintendent of Shell Canada about 2 weeks ago, Sean Baxter, and talked about Shell's operations in Northeast BC, and it kind of goes back to that previous one. Sean indicated to me that he's down about 40% of his total staffing complement, just as a result of having such a difficult time attracting trained professionals into Northeast BC to work in the industry, geologists and engineers and etc. And so he said it's been a real dilemma for him in terms of trying to attract professionals as one component. I'm going to go for a tour of their assets with Sean next week and just go out and tour the West, because I think as Coastal GasLink gets further along down the road in the Wild Lake Compressor Station, Shell's assets become even more prominent as they connect into and as being the lead proponent for LNG Canada. So we'll go out and do a tour with them at that time. I had a meeting with Northern Lights College last week, I think, and just talked about their plans for their incoming international students and the program for that. And so they, obviously it's a big concern for them in terms of how the international component of their programming moves forward with travel restrictions and all of the components around having to isolate and quarantine and all of that. So they've got a real solid plan in place in terms of what they're doing and how they're doing it. And to me, it's really an important piece, because I see how that impact of those international students have made on our community and how evident they are in working as well as going to school. And so I'm going to do a follow-up with them in the next coming weeks, and we'll do a interactive session with the mayor and the students, welcoming them into the community, etc.
Your worship,
Yep.
on that, when you're doing that, I think it would be beneficial to mention to these students coming in that this whole CRA scam that's going on. So I know we did have a young international student who we were able to get $600 of her money reimbursed, but 600 of it got scammed out of her. And so they need to know that the city, the RCMP, the BC government, the federal government will not be calling them and telling them, you got to go buy Google Play cards or you're getting deported. And somehow these people are getting the student list from the college website, and they phoned all of the international students.
That's
so
a
if
good
you wouldn't
point.
mind,
And
I'd
for sure, I'll
appreciate it.
follow that up with them as we begin that engagement. Provincial Caribou Recovery Program, we had a conference call, Zoom meeting last week with them provincially, but it was a provincial call with all of the municipal and interested parties from across BC. So there was 120, 130 people on the call, and it was really tough. So we're giving them some feedback in terms of that. They need to do these regionally because the regions for the southern mountain caribou are certainly different than the Selkirk or the different areas of the province. So it was very little value to me in terms of what they've done. They did give some updates in terms of some of the components around what they're doing and how they're moving forward with the Caribou Recovery Program and predator management, habitat, socioeconomic, some of that stuff, but it's far more pertinent for us regionally as we understand that than it is that provincial discussion. And I had zero interest in somebody from Revelstoke talking about a particular area of habitat that they're concerned with in a creek. It just got lost. It was too big a call. So. I received a package from Chetwynd Forest Industries, West Fraser. Sorry? Go ahead, Councillor.
Sorry to interrupt. I just had a quick follow-up question on the Caribou Recovery Program. So with the, initially it's been a long, drawn-out thing, but we did end up back at the table as per council's decision. One thing that's been particularly contentious up here was the announcement of the province of giving consideration to a moose cull. Is that something that was floated within the working group before being released publicly, or did you find out about that?
Well, we found, so we've had very little,
else.
there have been no regional meetings that I've been invited to as a result of Caribou Recovery since we got back in and during COVID. But these guys spoke a little bit about the ungulate population as it relates to the impact of moose and on the predators and bringing predators into a region that may enhance the danger of caribou. And so they talked some about that, but very, very little, and I haven't gotten any information on that as a result of any of the interactions with the meetings because we haven't had any.
Thank you.
But for sure, once we have those and get them back on track, that's part of that discussion about predator management and socioeconomic and the backcountry access.
Yeah. And just to my mind, part of the benefit of us being at that table is that we wouldn't find out about decisions like that in a press release at the very least.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we've got a package of material from West Fraser Mills in regards to their timber supply license that they apply for. And unlike a friend who lived forestry for all his life, I know very, very little about forestry. And so it asked if we wanted to have an opportunity to meet with them and get some information on which I did. And I went out to Chetwynd and met with West Fraser and had a really good conversation with them, and really was helpful to me in terms of understanding a little bit about forestry. And West Fraser and the forestry industry are an important segment of the economic impacts of our community, our region, and I felt I should be better informed on that stuff. And so I went out and met with them, and it was very worthwhile. And as a result of that, they've, we talked about how important the industry are to us, and that connection to LP in terms of supply of harvested supply stuff. So anyway, it was worthwhile, and I'm really glad I went out and met with them and met with the entire senior team. I toured last week with Kevin and Devin and Nicole on the 8th Street Bridge project, and I think all of us see that we hear about the lift station, we hear about the bypass and all that stuff. So I went out and Kevin gave me the bird's eye view of the transfers, the lift station, the underground, under the creek, new sewer line that's going on by Cal Tire at the creek. And really appreciated the opportunity to do that and learn firsthand about that project and what it means and what it's going to do and how it's going to impact flow and all of that stuff. And then I was out at we went out to the South Dawson Reservoir, the new reservoir at South Dawson, and that's that million cube reservoir we built, and it's now, I think, about 85% full, and it's a big body of water for us in terms of supply to the community. And I saw it when it was under construction, but it's really impressive to see, and it gives that whole magnitude of water supply for the community now, and how adding the capacity of distribution with the water treatment plant that we did 2 or 3 years ago, and adding another 50% of capacity there, plus supply. We have 8, 9, 10 months worth of supply sitting in storage today for water, as well as capacity for distribution. Our community is poised to, we have sufficient water, both in terms of distribution and supply, for a population of 2 or 3 times the size we are today. So it's really impressive to see that reservoir capacity, and the strength of the Kiskatna watershed as well over the last number of years has really put us in a very good position for the future, I think. Councillor Dubecko?
On the 8th Street Bridge, is there any construction going to be starting this fall that'll go through winter on the actual bridge?
Kevin? Water?
So through your worship, recently updated from Modi's project manager on it there last week. They said they are a little bit behind with the underground utilities and the sewer lift station, and they can't start the bridge until that's completed. So what they indicated to me is that there would be no bridge construction started this winter, so there'd be no reduction in the lanes. So throughout the winter, it'll maintain the full 4 lanes.
Councillor Parsons?
Yeah. I'd like to ask a question about the South Dawson Reservoir. Certainly, the city's water system has been greatly strengthened through it, but it's a reservoir, and I read a report just recently about seismic activity in the northeast of British Columbia, reporting over 1,000 earthquakes, very small, most of them, but there have been 1 or 2 larger ones in the order of 4 to 5. One was in the Fort St. John area. Do we have any information about the resiliency of our reservoirs to earthquakes in the 4 and 5 magnitude? I just don't know it, but when Mayor was talking about how our water system is so much more robust now, and it flashed my concern about the earthquake activity. It's all due to fracking, right? I believe, but 1 or 2 of them have been quite high.
I'm unaware, Kev, as far as earthquake with our reservoirs, but is there any information there?
So through your worship, I don't know specifically, but through the design of that reservoir, there would have been a number of safety factors added to to that design to ensure that there is some overbuilding, let's say, of that. So that's one component. The second is that it's registered under the dam safety program. Mm-hmm. And so we inspect that regularly. I think if it's not weekly, it's monthly, that we inspect the dam for any signs of deterioration in any way, shape, or form. So and we're required to do that on just about all of our reservoirs from a, safety perspective. So that's what I do.
Yeah, one of the recommendations was that fracking not be conducted within a certain distance of key infrastructure. You haven't seen that report, eh?
I've heard of it. I have not read it.
Okay. So I just wondered if we could be on top of that, because, if 4 or 5 there's only been 2 that size, right? But one of the suspend fracking in a certain area until there was a study. There was a study done, right? I think Premier Horgan, they put a moratorium on fracking in that area, but then there's this subsequent report talks about the fact that having fracking done no closer than a certain distance. Maybe we should get on top of that, because reservoirs are key pieces of infrastructure to us.
So the BC Oil and Gas Commission, I know, have a process in place now as a regulator for the oil and gas sector, and I know Geoscience BC also did and have done a bunch of work around seismicity with the industry, and I know that now any seismic event larger than whatever the number is required to be reported to the OGC as a result of follow-up, and the industry then have to adhere to that. So I know that the regulatory process of that is ongoing, and I know that we're concerned around the dam, and was one around the restriction of hydraulic fracturing in certain areas. So. I just want to follow up on the resource series breakfast. Is a breakfast series that's put on normally at the Resource Forum in Prince George, and this year they moved it to a online event, and so this tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, they're intended to focus on mining, forestry, and energy, and each morning the minister would host the breakfast at the Resource Forum, attended by the delegates at the forum, and it would be a panel of somebody from industry would moderate the event with the minister, and then usually a mayor and somebody from industry. And so Wednesday morning I'm on a panel with the minister on energy, and the mayor of Sault Ste. Marie from perspective of the impacts of energy across the country, and Brian Cox, the CEO of Canadian LNG Alliance, will be moderating it. And I took the opportunity, it's a virtual panel, but you can be there in person as well, and so I'm going to fly down to Vancouver tomorrow. I got a couple of other meetings that I've arranged as well as being down there, and I took the opportunity to do that. But it's a good opportunity to speak about the community and the region, and it's an online forum for an hour. The Northeast Regional Community Foundation, I know Councillor Earl's very involved in it and reports on an annual regular basis, and so Susie Lefferson was here as the executive director on Friday and Thursday. I met with her. She gave me an update on it, and really good to get that update on the operations of the Regional Community Foundation that's now made up of Dawson Creek, Hudson Hope, Pooskoopi, and Taylor. And the four communities got, I think it originated out of some matching funding through NDIT and built the fund up to now it's got about $500,000 to $600,000 in it, and it's giving regular intake to the foundation, but also the opportunity to grow the foundation. It was very beneficial, and I really appreciated Susie coming and giving me the details on it. Do you want to speak to that?
And just one thing I would highlight is over the last few months during COVID, some of the emergency funds that they've been able to access through the Canadian Foundation, the umbrella organization, those are not funds that were contained that are coming from the Northeast region, but because they've got it set up and they have the capacity to do it now, they're able to help allocate those funds and direct them into our community at no additional cost to our community. Yeah.
So. Anyway, it's really good information, and we'll get, and maybe at some point we'll get Susie to come and do a presentation as a delegation to council. It's really, really informative. 9.2, I want to give a quick update on Blair, and I took the opportunity to run over to Whitecourt about 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, I guess now, and toured the Whitecourt Splash Park. And as a result of council's direction about, okay, we've got to move forward now with the redevelopment of Rotary Park and Rotary Lake and all of that stuff. And so we had heard about Whitecourt's facility as being really amazing, and they've done a lot of work over the last 15 years. It's about an 80-acre site, but it is really impressive, and they've done a great job. And playground equipment, kind of a lazy river water slide with tubes, and a park with splash park, and really impressive. And so it's certainly got me engaged about what we do and how we move forward with it. And so I think part of that is now for us is to start to look at some of those other options. And I talked to Mayor Ackerman on Thursday. We'll go up, take a chat, or run up to Fort St. John to meet the new CAO and have a look at their facility, and then begin that planning piece. Because I think to me now it's location is everything, and then what and how do we want to plan for the future of this redevelopment and where and how we do that. Blair?
Your Worship, I think you've covered it. I mean, it was certainly worthwhile. I think most of us have traveled that corridor many times through our lives. Very rare do you take the time to drive through a community if you're on your way from here. It's point A to point B, and they have a wonderful community and their setup. They've spent a great deal of time and effort in this Rotary Park, and it's helpful. We're going to have to, as we move forward, to redevelop or look at what a redevelopment of Rotary Lake looks like. I think there's going to be a great deal of engagement take place with the community, but to have a starting point and some things to reflect upon as to what other communities have done is going to be very important.
And so the direction we gave was to look at that redevelopment, but I think now, to me, I'd like us to look at grant application opportunities to see if we can get some money for some planning money to start to put kind of that in place, and for us to begin to get engaged in that in a real significant way in the coming months, and then also to start to conduct some stakeholder meetings. I thought if council were okay with that, and we start to maybe reach out to Rotary and some of the other organizations in the community to talk about the plans to redevelop Rotary Lake, Rotary Park, and what does that look like, and seek the community's input into that. So I'd like council's kind of view on that, if you guys are okay with us to begin to do that work and engage in it. Councillor Parsons?
Well, I'm glad you went. Just where is it located in Whitecourt? Because after hearing that you and Blair had gone, I was coming back from Edmonton and I turned left at the arena there, looking for it. But where is it?
It's down at the bottom and where the downtown. So when you get down at the first set of lights, you make a right. If you're coming from Edmonton heading home, turn right there, and it's right back in the edge of town along the river in there. Really, really, it's worthwhile if you're going there. I was amazed at how many people posted on my Facebook, oh yeah, we go there all the time, take the kids there all the time. It's a great place. So. Councillor Jabecka?
One of the things with the an extensive development like that, I mean, it's one thing to, put in a splash park or a small sort of a development, but when you're looking at something extensive, I think we really have to consider the floodplain there. Yeah. Because you do get those periodic floods, which basically, when Dale was talking about having to pump out the Rotary Lake, it's one thing to pump it out in the spring, but if it floods 2 more times a year, you have to pump it out again, and it's all the dirt and stuff that comes along with it, eh?
Yeah. I think that's that engagement part I'd like to start with community and with council and with our stakeholders, is to say, what are some of the things that we think are important amenities to plan for the future? Can we accomplish it in the location we are in now? Is that a higher risk for us to do it down there because of exactly that? Should we look at another location? I think it's that planning piece for the long term. Let's make the best decision of what it is we want to develop, and does it fit down there? Can we move it? Can we accomplish it down there by making some modifications to the infrastructure down there by protecting it from the flood? So I think that's all that discussion we need to have. And that's what I'd like to get started on. I think it's important. I think it was demonstrated the passion of our community for that amenity, and we need to, I think it's an important amenity for us to get moving on, to get the planning in place and start to put it back into an amenity that's valued by our community, and that park that's free and available, and you go and enjoy the summer months. Councillor Parslow?
Do you have any figures on how much they've invested there?
I don't know that we...
Their CAO has sent some numbers to myself. I'll give you some very rough numbers. The splash park itself was in the $500,000 range. The Lazy River development was in the $350,000 range. Some of the significant playground equipment they had there was $100,000+. So to say $1 million, I think, would be
in capital.
Certainly not in capital.
And operating?
Some of their operating costs, because they use their water system. There's two different things. Their lazy river system, they have a pond beside it that they use that water, and it is a circulating pump that utilizes that. Then the splash park itself uses their water, their treated water. And I believe it's in the $26,000 a year range is the numbers that I received from their CAO.
My concern always is painting an unrealistic picture. You know, is that something, when we talk about those dollars, is that realistic for us? I'm not asking for an answer, just sharing my thinking. You know
anything can be done if council wishes.
Yes, exactly. That's just my thoughts, you know what I mean? It's.
I think that's the piece to me that we want to get started on, is to say what is it that the community sees as asset that they'd like to see develop. What are the interests of our other stakeholders? Where do you do it? And then you start to scope out capital operating and say, is that something we want to do or not to? And begin that planning process, I think, is so important right now. And so I guess what I'm asking for now is, can we start to explore some planning grant money through different wherever, and also to begin that engagement with our community and start some stakeholder meetings with the various groups and interest parties. Does council have any concerns of us doing that? Councillor Earl?
No, I'm fine. As you said, that is an amenity that well loved by the community. Unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond our control, is moved beyond its operating life. So we have to look for either something to replace it where it is, or we hopefully can do something somewhere else. I'm fine with that, as my concern is always with these things is, I think I mentioned it before, what the military refers to as mission creep. So we have a very specific goal in mind, and as far as something we're trying to replace, and we want to make sure as we start engaging with various stakeholders, the plan doesn't grow beyond our capacity to, beyond what we have in mind or beyond the scope of what we're trying to replace. Just looking at, you know, even going back to the event center, you're looking to replace a pool and you end up with a horse barn and a bunch of it, which is great. It's a great amenity, but I think what was initially proposed and what everybody ended up with, it was different. So I just want to bear that in mind as we move forward.
So what we're talking about here is engaging in that planning process of what is it that you're looking to replace, and what does that look like? What is the components that the community sees as being valued, being amenities that we should consider, and what is the interest of stakeholders and other groups? We're not in any way at this point even have any concept of what that would look like. It's engage in the community at this point. Councillor Dweckhoff?
Yeah, like my only concern, it's great to sit down and I guess the modern term is reimagine. But, it's always in the context of your capabilities or our abilities to pay. And I guess long term, things will change obviously, but a wish list, it's like going to a group of students and saying, what would you like to see in Dawson Creek? The list just goes on and on and on, and there's no context there connecting it to the ability to pay.
Yeah, and why I say we're going to engage stakeholders, because maybe it's a concept that the Rotary Club will say, look, that's long-term, that's what we want to do as a long-term plan. So that, to me, we got to get it started, right? And council directed us to say we want to look at the redevelopment of that facility, so. Councillor Parslow?
Well, related to this, one of the issues that needs to be negotiated through is the disposition of the current Rotary Lake, because this site may be somewhere else, right? But we ultimately have to get rid of that lake. It's deteriorated to a degree that it needs to be, if you could operate it, it needs to be replaced, but we can't operate it. So we need to clear up that ongoing expense and liability that we have. And that would be all part of it, because I imagine in what you've just described, possibly that floodplain is not a suitable place, right? So,
Through you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Parslow, I think that will be part of the discussions moving forward. A decision has to be made. Location, if council is to move ahead with the redevelopment of some form of facility to replace Rotary Lake, is it in that location? If it isn't, what is the reclamation of that lake facility going to look like? Is there going to be a relocation of the splash park that presently exists there to be in conjunction with the new one, if that is how council wishes to proceed? There will be a number of things as we work through this, but without question, the reclamation of that site, should it not be chosen to be used, is going to have to be part of this.
And council is the one that gets to make the decisions on this. Like, this is as it evolves, council gets the one that, but we're just saying, as the planning piece moves forward, do we want to begin that? And so, Councillor Javeka?
You know, one of the things when we did the tour down there, it seems to me that with the depth of the lake, which was originally 5 feet, if it was filled up to 3 feet, and we could have a splash park type thing in there that was maybe 12 to 18 inches deep, is that something that is acceptable to the health people, or are all of those expensive conditions, do they still apply? Because I don't see where, you know, filling it up to some point and then reestablishing a surface is a huge cost, and it's not a, you know, really extravagant development. But I'd be interested in knowing if that would appease the Northern Health.
Claire?
There is a set depth, and Ross, I'm not sure what that depth is, whether it's 12 inch. Most of the splash parks, though, that I've seen, and certainly looking at the White Court one, have no water, no standing water in them, per se. It is just either a sloped or a flat facility with spray guns, mushroom, waterfall, and so on. So the water's coming down. It wouldn't hold, whether it be 12 inches or 16 inches of water. So that facility, should it be chosen to proceed there, could be brought to a level and a splash park built on. I mean, I'm throwing that out. That's just out of the blue. Or if that wasn't the location for a new splash park and council chose to move forward somewhere else, could we use that for some kind of recreational facility? That's, I think, some of the things we could bring back to council, or council will hear as we go out to engage.
Councillor Parslow?
I think the word, regardless of our various thoughts and capacity, what the mayor said about the community, I think they're expecting us to engage in some dialogue. So I'm going to make a motion that we engage the community in planning discussion around water park opportunities, splash park opportunities within the community.
Okay.
Is that acceptable?
Yep, no, it's second. Councillor Wilbur? Yeah. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. 9.3, I put a memo together in regards to childcare in Dawson Creek, and you know, we were at a meeting with the Peace River Regional District and the Healthcare Scholarship Committee that I'm on, and we were up and met with the head of the BC Nurses Union. So we put a bunch of stuff together trying to attract, as Charlie had mentioned earlier, about healthcare professionals, RNs, and so one of the comments that was made is one of the things that's a real struggle is childcare. And you think about our healthcare workers, especially as that shift work, 7/24, and so it's a real indicator to me of how important childcare is. And the more I met with the various people that are in the community responsible for childcare and organizing childcare and where the childcare providers are and daycare providers. And it really is evident to me how important childcare is as a function that provides a support to families who now need to either get back to work or have the support to go to work, to be able to have appropriate levels of childcare to be able to return to the workplace. And the more I've dug into it, the more important I realize it is. And I met last week with the head of the Dawson Creek Hospital, as well as the lady who runs the Emerge services. And the lady who Emerge said, you know, when they have somebody call in sick, that they have a nurse that RN that calls in sick, and they have to call somebody in on short notice, and it kind of makes sense. That happens to everybody. She said I think she said they have 2 or 3 or 4 of the people in the community that are registered RNs, but either are not able to work because they have no childcare, or who can't come in and fill those shifts because of no level of appropriate childcare. And the more, then I hear more about it from industry and the service sector, and how important that segment of childcare is to the economy of our community and the well-being of our community. And so I've done a bunch of research. UBCM had some fund grant money available, and Chetwynd have leveraged that and have put a survey together of their community to try to get the data in terms of what the issues are, who's providing it, etc. And there's also the province of BC has grant money available, and I just saw on the weekend that City of Prince George was just awarded, I think, in the neighborhood of $5 or $6 million to build a childcare facility in downtown Prince George, as well as to operate it through the YMCA. So it's certainly a major initiative by the provincial government to get that childcare services. 2 things then: it's facilities, and it's getting the people. ECEs, early childhood educators, who take a 2-year program, become licensed, then the facility becomes licensed, or somebody who runs it out of their home as a responsible adult takes an 18-hour, 20-hour course, I think, to be able to run a home childcare service. If you're a registered licensed childcare provider, you get the subsidy from the province for that, and that's how they get to the $10 a day, I think, objective of childcare. And so what I would like to ask, if council, and I put the motion forward, that staff be directed to apply for a grant for a child care action plan survey to be used to engage parents, guardians, providers, operators, and stakeholders, and gain an understanding of the current challenges, strengths, and opportunities in regards to child care services in Dawson Creek and the surrounding area. And further, the mayor, on behalf of the city, be authorized to meet with local child care stakeholders to gain an understanding of child care needs in our community. And so that, by way of a motion, is what I'm looking to put forward. Councillor Wilbur?
So moved.
Move. Second. Councillor Parslow. And the reason now is because I think we need to do that early analysis and the analytics of what are the needs in our community, and then begin to move forward with the province to say what's available, how can we build a program, and see that supported. And we've also talked to my peers at the Peace River Regional District through Area D and E, through Leonard and Dan, and they're both very interested in it as well. So I think there's a real need, and I think there's a real opportunity for us to take the lead on this, to build a model of how we can help enhance childcare in the community. Councillor Parslow, then Councillor Earl.
Yeah, I may have missed this. Has there been any move going on in the province about paying the early childcare workers a decent living wage?
I think I've heard that as the feedback, that that's a real big issue for them, and that's why I need to engage in that with those local childcare stakeholders, people who are providing it. Campus daycare, the Kiwanis, Blair and I met with Johanna from the Kiwanis childcare. There's a couple of licensed facilities, and there's about a dozen home providers. So we need to I think find that detail of what are the issues and where do we need to find the support.
Well, I understand that to be a major because people get trained, but they don't get well enough paid, and they go into other jobs where they're better paid.
That's what, like, I've heard that as well, Charlie. Yeah. Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Your Worship. As somebody who spends somewhere between $800 and $1,000 a month on child care, it's an issue near and dear to my heart. I know in my experience across the city, there is a broad spectrum of quality with respect to childcare, as you said, everywhere from registered early childhood educators to people running out of their basement. Most of those people are pretty good, but some just see it as an easy way to stay home with their kids and pick up a couple other kids during it. One thing around the provincial government subsidies, those are kind of all over the place. there's a couple different subsidies that either the early childhood education provider applies for specifically through the government, or that the parents apply for that is means tested. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of subsidies at the moment, but nowhere, unless somebody has no means, nowhere close to approximating that $10 a day, even remotely, to the best of my knowledge, especially if you've got two parents working, which is why someone might have to have a child in childcare. If you've got two people working full-time, that subsidy that is almost
Doesn't apply.
non-existent. It would get clawed back almost entirely. So I don't know. There may be a piece of engaging with the provincial government on their part. But also with respect to ECEs, most ECEs that aren't, I mean, if they're running a business themselves, which is the primary model here, it's not you're never going to get rich doing it, but I think you can do okay. It's the people right out of school, and that I think they have to do an practicum for a number of time, and I think that's also a pinch point where a lot of people get dissuaded from pursuing it because it isn't a high-paying practicum. So, anyway, interested to see what you come back with, but I fully support it.
Thank you. So, yeah, I want to move forward with it and get some grant money and begin to do the work on it and to begin to meet with it. And we'll keep council informed on it as we move away. And certainly I'll keep you guys informed. If you want to attend and be part of the meetings, I'm happy to have you there. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. We at the Peaceful Regional District have been dealing with the Treaty 8 First Nations as they've been going through each of the individual communities applying and doing with their treaty land entitlement selections. And so the treaty land entitlement selections by treaty give the First Nations communities an opportunity at land that they feel were due to them as a result of the early days of the treaty signing, where the number of members were miscounted or undercounted at the time that they signed treaty, and allocated a certain amount of land to them as a result of that. And so that's part of the treaty process today, of them making right some of those inequities and the errors that were made in those days. And so it's important to get the treaty land entitlement process completed. And so each of the communities, Doig, Blueberry, Soto, West Moberly, Halfway, Prophet, have all, McLeod Lake did a presentation, but they signed treaty in 2000, so they haven't made any treaty land entitlements. But each of the bands now are in that process of getting their treaties, trying to get them completed and signed and settled, and they've got the land allocations dedicated to where they're making their selections. And what I'm asking for is for council, and we've done it at the Peace River Regional District, to send a letter of support to the province and the federal government saying how much we want to see these treaty land entitlement process completed on behalf of the bands to get them moving forward. And so that's my request today, is that we've sent that letter of support from the PRRD, as have the affected communities in different areas that are directly impacted by the treaty land entitlements, but that we be directed to send a letter to support the West Moberly and Soto First Nations for their treaty land entitlement selections. Councillor Parslow?
Can I?
Sure, go ahead.
I have a problem with how this is wording. It says here, for their treaty land entitlements. I have no idea what they've chosen.
Right.
And can pass no comment. I support the treaty land, the process, right? For sure. I've listened to that, and so I could support encouraging the province and that to get on with it, but I can't support their selections because I don't know what their selections are.
So just to remove that word selections from the motion.
That would help me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And that's all we're doing, is asking that we send a letter of support for the treaty land entitlement process, right? Councillor Wilbur?
I'll move the motion, but I just want to add to that the community engagement that we went to in Fort St. John regarding TLE, and the federal government had representatives there. Part of the process is, yes, one, we support them applying, but through that process, they actually have to come back to the communities to say, these are the lands that we selected, this is how we see it being built. So I think this is just the first step, and then part of that process is they come back to us.
Because we haven't been directly impacted by any treaty land entitlement selections in and around Dawson Creek, there's some out in Tumbler Ridge and certainly in Chatwin and
Fort St.
Hudson
John.
Hope and Fort St. John by the Doig and Blueberry. So we haven't been directly impacted, but that community engagement is ongoing, and I know that there was a bunch of community meetings up in Charlie Lake over the Red Creek and some of the properties there, and I know they've been extensively engaged with Tumbler Ridge and Chatwin and Hudson Hope. Dawson Creek's just the anomaly because we haven't had any selections in and around our vicinity. Councillor Javetkov?
Yeah, I don't agree with the wording of the motion there. You mentioned that you would like to see us encourage them to complete the process. It's not just West Moberly and Salto that are in the process, it's all the other First Nations as well that are in the treaty. And I know there's a lot of controversy over these land entitlement locations. So, you know, I have no problem with supporting or encouraging the provincial government to, and the federal government, they're part of it, to move ahead with the process, which they are anyways. I mean, there's meetings all the time, and I know there's, like I say, a lot of controversy. So, you know, generally to encourage them to continue with the process, to try and complete it, but to approve specific land entitlements and even to specific bans, I have a problem with that.
Yeah. So at this point, we haven't been asked at this point. Well, I'm sure Doig, Blueberry, others will come through the RD, and that's all we did is through the RD is said, look, if the RD is sending a letter of support, would it be worthwhile for the municipalities as well to do that? And Chetwynd have and Hudson Hope did. So that was it directed back to us, and that's why I brought it forward. Go ahead.
There is a committee set up dealing with these. It's actually chaired by Andy Ackerman. I wonder if we should maybe get a perspective from them before we move ahead with a recommendation.
Yeah, they're dealing with the North Peace. I forget the acronym for it, but they're dealing with the blueberry and the Doig specifically, not the entire tree.
No, they're dealing with all of them. The South Peace as well.
Okay. Like I say, this was
You know,
this came through the PRRD, and that's why I brought it back. So, Councillor Earl.
One or two quick questions. So the recommendation or the motion as it's worded here, is that more or less the same as it was at the RD?
Yeah, the RD have already sent a letter of support to the province and the feds about the treaty land entitlement. And so what we did is we've got samples of, as well as Chetwynd, as well as Hudson Hope. So we got samples of their letters that they've sent on support.
The affected communities, as per this letter, are District of Hudson's Hope and Chetwynd. And Tumbler Ridge is not.
Tumbler Ridge are still in that engagement process with West Moberly on those. So the District of Hudson Hope and the District of Chetwynd have already sent their letters of support.
Okay, so we could, yeah. And is the District of Tumbler Ridge engaging with which First Nations community?
West Moberly.
West Mo?
And Soto as well.
All right, I just want to make sure, I'm perfectly happy to support if these TLEs have been agreed to by the affected communities. I'm not going to parse their wishes or the wishes of their elected representatives. I just want to make sure we're not presuming to speak on behalf of, or if Tumbler Ridge isn't a part of this, not to muddy the water and either be more specific or, as Councillor Javetkov indicated, just supportive in general.
So we're not supporting the treaty land, I think, to Councillor Parslow's point about specific selections, but we're supportive of the process of the treaty land entitlement process, getting the province and the federal government to conclude it. West Moberly have indicated that we're waiting for the province to get, and the feds to get this done for us, right? Blair?
Just for clarification for Jeremy, as I read the memo we're discussing, it isn't anything more than the District of Hudson's Hope and the District of Chetwynd have provided a letter of support, nothing to do with the land selections that I can read into this memo at all. This is just Dawson Creek being asked to provide a similar letter to say that Dawson Creek supports the process.
Okay.
Tumbler Ridge, I know, is engaged as well, as the mayor said, as others. I'm not aware of any treaty land entitlement selections within the municipality of Dawson Creek.
Councillor Wilbur?
Exactly, and again, I just want to reiterate, this is just a first step in the process that they have to take. And maybe we can get that, maybe staff can get that information on that process to give out to council, because there are steps from the federal government that we heard about. I know Councillor Parslow and I were both there, and Doig River had put it on, and it was to do with land that they were getting in for St. John, but this is just a step saying that we support them in starting that process of making their selections. They have to come back. It all comes back through the communities.
So I'm need a motion if council, so Councillor Wilbur? That staff be directed to send a letter of support to West Moberly and Soto for their treaty land entitlement process.
Yep.
Second, Councillor Parslow. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. I got a call from a downtown business owner about downtown parking, and he was indicating that with the removal of the land, the parking lot west of Western Financial Group for the new affordable housing, that they're starting to feel a little bit of a pinch of employee parking downtown. And he said, I'm really focused on making sure that we have our staff not park in front. So I went for a little drive around because I wanted to have a look one day or a couple of days, and so the indication is the gym's getting a lot more activity in behind their place and across the street from the dollar store and B&T in that parking lot in there. And the one by Uniglobe, and I've been by there a couple times, and there's about 35 spots in there, and it's got about 20 to 25 normally. So the removal of that takes away one more option of downtown merchant parking. And so I talked to Blair and Kevin about it and suggested maybe we clean up the lot next to the Calvin Cook Performing Arts Center. And it is paved, it's old, but it's paved, and we'll run the sweeper through it, and just to encourage that as another option for the time being. But it is a city-owned property, and so I wanted to make sure that we bring it back to council for your discussion. Councillor Earl?
I heard similar concerns from some downtown businesses and fully support it. If it's an amendment we already have and we can just tidy it up a bit and it's usable, all the better.
Second that.
Councillor Kemp?
Yeah.
Do you need a motion, Blair, or do you, Kevin? You cleaned it up. I see the street sweeper went by it, or somebody did.
I'm not sure we need a motion,
Yeah.
Your Worship. We've heard the direction. We can.
Yeah, it just was for information, really, in terms of that. Councillor
If
Dueck?
we're considering it overflow parking, we should probably have a motion just to formalize it.
It is public parking and it is designated, but that's great. If somebody wants to make a motion that we ensure that we did it. Now so did we clear that lot? We would have snowplowed that one, right? And now would we just consider then, if we use this one, that we will not be clearing that one and we would clear this one then? Would you?
If through your worship, if council so wishes this, we
Okay.
can do that.
Then that'd be good. We formalize that by way of a motion then, so.
Just one question. There was a request before council about expanding the play area for the daycare.
There's a green area in between the parking lot and where the building used to sit, the old overweighty building sat on that green space, and I think that's where they were hoping to expand that.
This doesn't come.
No. So a motion? Can we direct staff to we'll use that for parking and that we will maintain it now in the winter months? And in lieu of not doing the one at 102nd.
So move.
Councillor?
Seconded.
Councillor Parslow, Councillor Earl, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then we had two delegation requests today. We had the Dawson Creek Regional Public Library, and they came forward with council for a request to add a part-time position I got from her. And Blair, you know if you can quantify exactly the ask of for their budget?
It is, so it would be a part-time, 25 hours, I believe, per week is what they were looking for. The increase is in the range of 47. I have to go back to their request, Your Worship, if you bear with me. Which on this computer?
44,000.
44,000, yes.
Okay.
Of new money.
Okay. Councillor Parslow?
Well, I appreciate I think the focus is probably the right one, the right direction they need to. But they're a board, and if they want to move in that direction, that's fine, but they should then make efficiencies somewhere else. And I keep harping on to the fact that Fort St. John Library, which I see often because of the art gallery there, and my role in Fort St. John with the support of the arts, operates 5 days a week and less hours. I think that they need to if they want to move in that direction, good for them, but I can't support any additional money given to the library.
Thank you.
That's, if they want to do that, cut their hours or cut the days they operate.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Earl?
I'm somewhat of a similar mind in the sense that if the recognition that your industry is moving more online and to digital options is, I think, a very realistic one, and one that it's in their best interests, and kudos to them to trying to get out in front of and be prepared for. Having said that, and I know this through my own experience in various jobs I worked, as you move more of these amenities online, the demand for on-site front counter service is usually reduced proportionate to that. So I don't see why they're first, as opposed to coming back and asking for an entirely new position, why they wouldn't look to transition one position into, instead of a front-facing staff member, have someone working in the back providing those digital options. It makes sense to me. In my experience, I get their point is they want to focus on being a community hub and providing everything they do plus this, but the reality is the more options people have to get books online, the less requirements or the less demand there's likely going to be for people to come in and get them face to face.
Thank you. So we should have a motion. Councillor Javetkov?
I'll move that we deny their request.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Parslow? Discussion. Councillor Javetkov, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm basically reiterating. I could do that, though, if you want.
Well, that's your choice.
They're very passionate, obviously, about the library. I guess that's why they're on the board. But at some point, you have to look at, as we move forward, what falls off the table, because you can't just keep adding and adding. That's what we're finding with our own budget. And to me, we just reduced their budget here a year or two ago. It would be basically going backwards, like increasing again. So, Jeremy's suggestion is one suggestion. It's, to me, it would be the way to go. The other thing is to lay off a couple of people and hire an IT person. There's different ways to do it.
Thank you. Further discussion? Right, if the question, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Opposed, Councillor Kemp. And the 9.62, the South Peace Mile Zero Park Society, with the request that we, where we reduced their budget by 29% or $16,000, $19,000, that we re-implement the cut. Councillor Parslow, you had...
I'd like to make a motion that staff be directed to meet with Mile Zero Park Society concerning the issues raised by Dale Campbell in his presentation, and then report back to staff for any action may be needed that they recommend.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? So Councillor Wilbur, discussion? Councillor Earl?
Just out of curiosity to Councillor Parslow, what are we hoping, what more information do we require from staff to make a decision that you're hoping they'll be able to provide?
The issues raised around the extra costs associated with saving the city from harmless from northern health violations, they were not considered, I think, at the time the staff, we made that decision to remove that 29%. But there are some legitimate extra costs and other information that we were not aware of when we did that motion.
Thank you. Further discussion? Blair?
Just so that I'm clear, Your Worship, when we meet with them, is it the intent then we would bring back, and I'll just crystal ball gaze, the council directed a $19,000 cut. It's been implemented and shared with the group. If we go there and they say, look, we have spent I'll use for the sake of it, $9,000 this year pumping it out, is it the expectation we'll bring that back, or is it the wish of council that we would look at bringing a recommendation that instead of a $19,000 cut, we now go to a $10,000 cut? I'm just want to be clear so when I bring something back.
My thought behind this is there were a number of issues raised that I don't believe anyone on council knew about, these extraordinary costs that they were incurring. I'm not sure that council even knew that their revenue had gone down by $100 and something thousand from the RV. In light of that, I'm expecting you to discuss this, see what if their figures are accurate, B, are they justified expenditures, are they unusual expenditures, and make a recommendation whether we consider the 29% cut just goes down to 10% cut. He did say, and I can speak to this, it's consistently mentioned that by the society, they understand financial challenges. They can support a 10%, whatever's been the going rate with most organizations, right? But given these extraordinary things, these extraordinary things are putting them in a real struggle when coupled with the RV revenue. So I think we should consider it. But I would rather consider it after you've had a study and your own reflections. You may recommend no change. So be it. But at least we have reconsidered it. I'm not predisposing to any outcome.
Councillor Javetkov and Councillor Wilmer.
So we've reduced that, their fee for service to 50,000. That's not implemented this year, is it? We've already paid them 69.
Next year.
Yes.
So this will be implemented next year?
Yes.
So are you talking about costs that they're going to incur next year? Or are we going to pick up the tab for the costs they incurred this year? Or?
Their bank account balance, okay, they go from year to year. I think until we've resolved the issue with the pool, you know, that they're pumping out.
It's a lake.
The lake, sorry. Until we resolve with the lake, those extraordinary costs are going to continue. He did offer a suggestion which was not feasible of filling it, and then that would reduce their costs. But I think Kevin's points are absolutely true, that the sand would freeze, it'd be useless, right? So yeah, those extraordinary costs are not just for this year, they're for next year, or until such time as the council has got a plan of what it's going to do with the Rotary Lake. So yeah, and there's no certainty about the RV revenue being improved next year. COVID is with us, and we're going to be facing perhaps that for another year or two.
So one follow-up, and then Councillor Wilmer.
Yeah, to me, basing it on this year's experience for next year's fee for service, I don't think is fair. As far as determining what's going to happen with that, with Rotary Lake, I anticipate that we will be making a decision here before next spring, and if it's a matter of filling it with dirt, it'll be out of the question. And as a matter of fact, I mean, to pump it out, it takes setting up a pump in there, and then the pump runs, you have to keep filling it with gas, and it runs the water into the creek. So I don't see where the big expense is. Anyways, I guess if you want to do a study and study it more, I guess that's okay.
Councillor Wilbur?
Paul and I are just in sync today. It's scary. I agree with the pumping, and what came to my mind was a sub pump, and they pump it out. But something that the delegation said that has just kind of stuck with me, and I made a note of it, was referring to the Mile Zero Park as an essential service. So one, I don't understand how they're an essential service under COVID. However, if they know they're not going to have revenue from the RV, they know they're not going to have people in there, I'm not sure why they're open. In my sense, they would have reduced those services and then use that grant money that they get from the city to take care of those expenses while they work through this COVID thing. They also did take wage subsidy. They also did take the loan. So they've added to that money that they lost. So in my mind, if you know you're not going to make money and you know you have to maintain the facility, wouldn't you have been better to use the money to maintain the facility rather than open up and incur those extra costs? So to be honest, I'm not even sure why the splash park was open, why they had that expense and have it open. I know they were trying to do it for, to have something for the community, but it was at the end of summer and it incurred costs that they didn't have to incur. So I'm happy to have staff go and have the conversation, because I'd like to know exactly what their expenses are, because this seems to be one group that does things, constantly comes back to say it costs more, and all of these extra expenses. And you know what? We have other facilities that groups are running too, and we don't seem to be having these conversations. So I would really like to see what the expenses were and how much money they brought in. And if you know you're not going to bring in revenue, don't incur expenses.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. So that's it for me. CAO update.
Your worship, not a lot in this meeting. I will, with fall coming on us right now fast, the leaves will be falling fast. We've in the past have had some challenges with people thinking the roadway is the place to dump their leaves, which in turn then flush over our sanitary, or not sanitary, but our storm sewers, plug them. So I will encourage people to not use the roadway as their dumping ground for leaves in the city. It creates as much as a challenge as it is to maintain them, bag them, get them to the compost. I encourage you to do that so we don't run into the drainage problems that it can create. As well, with winter coming, the same goes for snow. We still have a number of residents that think it's appropriate to push their driveway snow out into the middle of our streets. That is a violation of the bylaw, and we will be enforcing them. So again, just really pre-warning, use common sense when you're looking after your yard.
Thanks, Blair. Diary? Oh, sorry.
I just had a question for our CAO during his report, not necessarily with respect to the report he made. I just wanted to follow up on the tourism Dawson Creek. News has hit the social media that with the adjustments we've made to the tourism arrangement and the Alaska Highway House, the changes being made there. I'm just wondering if we're taking any steps to communicate that to the public, or have tourism communicated on our behalf and get out ahead of the rumor mill, because in a small town, as tales grow with the telling.
So we have a report in the in-camera meeting coming up to deal with that. We don't run the Alaska Highway House. That was under the tourism contract. With the changes and the direction council has directed to pursue for tourism, the management team that looks after tourism has given notice to the chamber that they will be vacating Alaska Highway House. So I can't speak at great length until we go through it, other than to say we have followed council's direction as far as tourism goes. We have an option to be brought back. We have to discuss it. It deals with lease agreements and contracts, and we'll discuss it in the upcoming meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Consent calendar, we have a couple items have a motion to receive consent? Councillor Wilbur, second. Councillor Kemp. Anything anybody would like to lift or discuss? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Strategic priorities?
No change.
Thank you. Media? Motion to recess to close, please. Councillor Wilbur, Councillor Kemp, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.